Hello, I'm Andrew Hode, head of Leckford Estate. Welcome to the Farming Conference and welcome to Leckford. Gosh, the sun's shining. I mean, that is a minor miracle. And if you've been here on Monday, you might have realised the relevance of that. We are set for a good day. Thank you for making the time to come today. We know some of you have come very long distances, and we also know how much you've got going on in what continues to be a very tough time for UK farming. I'd also like to welcome our audience that are live streaming today. Really appreciate that. The downside for you is you do not get to sample the fantastic food from our Waitrose chefs, but we hope you enjoy the conference nonetheless. So this is our first in-person farming conference since 2019, and our first one at Leckford. For those of you that are unfamiliar with Leckford, it was purchased by our founder, John Spearden Lewis, in 1929. It was his home, a farm, and a place where he pursued his passion for nature. We've farmed this land continuously for 95 years, and like many of you, experienced the ups and downs of farming across generations. It therefore feels appropriate to be here today to talk about how we meet our current and future challenges to ensure the long-term success of UK farming for generations to come. Today is an important day for us. We will cover a lot of ground. We have some great speakers who will share key messages, and we really hope you get a lot out of today. I'd now like to introduce Mark Shaler, who is our host for the day. Mark is an old friend of our business. He's a sustainability expert, an author, a presenter, a mentor, and a huge fan of Waitrose, and runs his own agency called Gabe.
How are you all? Good? Part of in my spare time, I help run a festival called The Good Life, and it's laughingly known as Waitrose in a Field. And we are literally Waitrose in a field. So it's like everything's circular. It's wonderful. So my name's Mark, and I've been working in sustainability for 34 years this year, working up in the north of England in London, and now I live back down in the Midlands. And sustainability runs through me like Blackpool through a stick of rock. And in that time, I've noticed farming has changed. I've noticed that soils, when I step off the edge of the field where I go for a run, I do run despite my size, I step down into a field. We're losing soil, we're losing productivity. And it makes me really sad. So I'm really excited to be here today to frame this, just to kind of pop up every now and again and say a few words. There's some interesting stuff to start off with, some stuff like fire alarms and toilets. If there's a fire alarm, go outside. If you want to use the toilet, go outside. No, if you want to use the toilet, it's just the other side of the tent. And as you'd expect, this isn't any old shabby Portaloo. This is a Waitrose toilet. So make sure you clean up afterwards. I want to talk about a few things that are positive. I'm going to talk a little bit about some music as well, because that's the way that I do things. But I also want to mention Slido. So I'm going to put a slide up at the end. Slido is a system you to scan the QR code when it pops up, and you can ask questions throughout the day. John at the back will be harvesting those questions and spitting out the chaff. No, we won't, not at all. We'll be bringing those together to the end. Is that okay? Anyone here got a nice big voice? Anyone likes a bit of a sing-song? Anyone? No? Because I always start with the same clumsy old joke. And you all like Lionel Richie, yeah? You look like Lionel Richie said, and you love a bit of Motown. I can see it in your eyes. So I love Lionel, and you know how Lionel sings, don't you? Does this? It's a nice song. There you go. Is it me you're looking for? And I've got 4 kids and 2 granddaughters, and my kids and my granddaughter say the same thing every single time. They say, the thing is, Pops, that's what they call me. I do like that, actually. Your cultural references are aging with you. Bring them up to date. Don't go early on this. So I think, well, where am I going to go next? Next band that had a song called Hello. I'm looking around for any ravers. You look like you might have raved once or twice. So there's a band called The Beloved, a London-based indie dance crossover band. They've got a song called Hello. Nobody's ever heard of it, really. And then after that, there was a band, what are they called? The Singing Plasterers, Oasis. They've got a song called Hello, and I'm 99.9% Blur, so I'm not playing that either. So you know where I'm going to end up, and it's important that I end up here. I'm going to end up with Adele, and there's something amazing about Adele. You've had 95 years here. My nan died a few years ago. She'd have been 95 this year. Adele was her favorite singer. My mum and dad, Adele was their favorite singer, is their favorite singer. My wife says she doesn't like Adele, but if I put Rolling in the Deep on, the kitchen's a blur of feet. My kids, they love Adele. My granddaughter, although predominantly a Swiftie, loves Adele. How do you stay relevant from 95 to 5? How do you do that? You move with the times. And sometimes those times are circular. And that's what Waitrose has done. That's what you've done. We're going back to the future with farming, and it truly, truly, really matters. Do you want to hear a little bit of Adele? I can't play it for long because she's not for me. Right, I love her, but she's not for me. What's the best bit of this song? Do not say the end. I could see it in your eyes. What's the best bit of this song? It's the match strike at the beginning. Do you know the match strike at the beginning? Should be able to hear it. There you go. It's me.
It's me.
Before I start, I want to just mark where we are. I've been working in climate change and sustainability since 1989. God, that's actually 35 years. That's depressing. And I've never been as scared, and I've never been as optimistic. And I can hold both of those thoughts in my hand at the same time. I used to run a veg box scheme in Bradford with Goosemore Organics. We ran a whole kind of, we had an alternative currency in Bradford called the Bradlets. So we did exchange. We ran car sharing clubs. That was a disaster. I don't ever do that. That's a complete time hoover. And I think it's really easy to look at where we are, to look at the 2 degrees increased temperature in the sea, to look at the 1.63 degrees increased temperature in the atmosphere, and to feel really down. I just want to start with some good news. Firstly, green electrons. I've been mapping, this is the kind of life I lead, I've been mapping the carbon intensity of a kilowatt of energy since 1990. And it used to be about 700 grams of carbon. It doesn't matter, just the number's important. One day last week, it was 70 grams of carbon per kilowatt hour. Mainly solar, a little bit of wind, tiny bit of nuclear from France. That's amazing. Right now, underneath Cornwall, there's a probe that the Eden Project have sent down. It's at 5 kilometers down now, and it's bringing water back up at 160 degrees. And when you talk to Tim Smith, he thinks we'll be completely net zero on carbon grid within 10 years. This is really interesting. This is good news. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to use less energy. Use more, by all means. No, don't use more. But this is happening for us. And then we've got regenerative agriculture, which is what you do, or what you will do. Carbon sequestered. Nutrition up. If you took a tomato from 1939 and you took the nutritional benefit of that, to get the same nutritional benefit today, you'd need to eat 10 tomatoes. That's mad. It's because we've depleted our soil. When we look at the amount of water the soil can hold, we can increase that by 100,000 litres per acre if we can get to 0.4% organic matter in the soil. This is what you do. This is your job. This is good news. And then we've got net zero. Yes, you can call it not zero if you want, but we're all doing net zero. Then we've got biodiversity net gain. This is enshrined in law now. You build a building, you've got to do 10% net gain. That's the law. How we measure that, we'll debate that one later. And then finally, we're kind of getting through the who gives a crap. We're looking through greenwashing. You've got to be super careful what you say now, and you've got to use science. So that's all good stuff. But I want to tell you a story that sounded like I could have got into Max Bygraves. Some of you are thinking that's a history lesson. Some of you are thinking they were the good old days, weren't they, with Max Bygraves. I want to tell you a story. How many punks have we got in the room? Ex-punks. I'm looking around. You look like you might have been an ex-punk, sir. A little bit of spitting and dancing. No? Well, I want to tell you a story. And this story relates to a singer called Iggy Pop, who was in a band called the Stooges. And it relates to another singer called David Bowie. You'll know who David Bowie, you can have Bowie if you want. You'll know who David Bowie is. Now, in 1976, they were both in Berlin. Pop was trying to save his career. Now, what they did is they recorded music all day and all night they partied. Berlin was a different place then. Apart from on Thursdays. It wasn't Top of the Pops. It was Starsky and Hutch, and it was broadcast on the Armed Services TV. And on the Armed Services TV, not only did they show Starsky and Hutch, but they also tested the Morse code during the break. And during the break, Bowie would read Dostoevsky, and Pop would play the ukulele. And they played this song, this Morse code song. And to Pop, it sounded like this. It's just Morse code. And Pop started playing it on his ukulele, and Bowie was tapping the beat out. He put Dostoevsky down just for a minute, tapping the beat out on the table. And they were playing. And within a few minutes, Pop trotted out the first line, "Here comes Johnny Yen again." And you know what this song is, don't you? This became the career-defining song of Iggy Pop. Sounds like this. Sounds like Motown, right? Now, that happened by accident, but of course it didn't happen by accident. It happened through curiosity. It happened through them being bored. Do you remember being bored? You're never bored when you got a phone, are you? It happened through play. These things fire up creativity and they stoke disruption. Now, we've got an amazing day today. I don't want you to be bored. I want you to be curious and open-minded. And I want you to play with ideas. I want you to wait and listen to everything and then see what happens. And I'm super excited to introduce our first speaker. Truly am. The agenda looks like this. I'm not going to read it out. You can all read. But we've got an incredible agenda for the day. And I want you to leave energized and optimistic. And I want you to leave positive. Here's the Slido. I'll leave this up while I introduce Sharon. And it's the second time I've introduced Sharon. And she is amazing. She's chairman of the John Lewis Partnership. She became the 6th chairman in February 2020. She moved here from Ofcom, the UK's communications regulator, where she served as chief executive. Forget all that. She's just a really lovely woman with good at her heart. And that's what attracts it. Like the John Lewis Partnership, it's got a center of gravity that other places don't have. It pulls good people in. And I'm super proud and excited to introduce Sharon White.
I feel like I've just had a kind of pop lesson through my 1970s and 1980s. I'm slightly forgiving of anybody who's under the age of 30, but Mark, thank you so much indeed. I'm Sharon White. I'm chairman of the John Lewis Partnership, and I wanted to add my very great thanks and pleasure to Andrews to be in Leckford today. It's about 18 months since I was last here, and I've never seen the farm look so beautiful and so stunning, and I know the team has worked so hard to put on today, so huge thanks. As Andrew has said, Leckford is where Speed and Lewis, the founder of the partnership, lived and worked for many years. And you may know the partnership, obviously Waitrose and John Lewis, amazing brands, but also the John Lewis Partnership is the biggest employee-owned business in the UK, and I'm still trying to find a bigger employee-owned business in the world. And so that sort of unique place that we still have in UK retail, in UK farming, is still extraordinary. Speed and Lewis was, it was variously described as a sort of eccentric idealist. What he was very clearly was an environmentalist and an ecologist decades before his time. Indeed, if he were here today in sort of Andrew's shoes, we would almost see him as the sort of embodiment of a modern man. But he was somebody who believed in nature many, many years before it became, in a sense, sort of fashionable. Thank you so much to everybody who has come today. We've got a range of so many suppliers whose relationship, whose intimacy with Waitrose matters hugely. I'm not sure whether Brian Barnett is in the room today. So Brian is one of our dairy farmers whom I visited a couple of times in 2020. Just a great example of, again, a lovely guy, but somebody who's been at the forefront of more sustainable farming for many, many years. A huge inspiration personally, but also a long-time champion of sustainable farming. Also want to thank everybody who's tuning in online. You're not getting the sunshine or the sort of Waitrose atmosphere, but I hope today is fruitful and really food for the soul. We've got some relationships in the room which run for decades. Some of us have worked with you through the good times, through the more difficult times, through some of the roller coaster years for decades. Stonegate, again, I'm not sure whether we've got a representative in the room who's been supplying eggs for Waitrose for 36 years. Our farmers and our suppliers are what make the Waitrose difference, whether that's the high ethical standards, whether that's leading animal welfare, and as you know, we are deemed by the internationally reputable organisations as being the world leader for animal welfare. It's quite an extraordinary place to be, and that's because of all of you. No compromise, and we can't succeed without you. Your success is ours. So farming is in my blood. My grandfather, my mother's father, used to have a farm in Jamaica, and probably the strongest experience of my childhood was going to see my grandparents. I was 5 years old. Really hot. We went at Christmas and it was about 95 billion degrees. And my father had effectively a subsistence farm. So grew sugarcane and mangoes and coconuts and had some small livestock. So there were lots of sort of chickens running around. And all the people in my mother's family are very tall. And so I'd have sort of uncles who were climbing coconut trees. And I used to, one of my treats when I went to see my grandfather was to walk through the sugarcane field. I can still smell it today. I can still smell the wet and the damp and the heat. And getting told off because I used to try to sort of pull the cane and suck the nectar in the farm. And that memory feels very personal. And my family, like lots of Jamaicans who came from Jamaica in the 1950s and 1960s, they missed the land. So you'll see in those of you who've spent any time in London, a lot of the allotments are actually taken by Caribbeans and Jamaicans because they miss growing their own food. And my grandfather, I look back now, made a sort of huge sacrifice in selling a field so that my mother could take the plane rather than the Windrush boat to come to the UK. And my mother spent the next 20 years effectively paying my grandfather so he could buy another field to farm. We're here today, and it's, of my almost 5 years in the partnership, this is one of my most exciting days that I've had in the business because we're launching our Farming for Nature initiative. It's a pivotal moment in the partnership's commitment to sustainability, but not just to sustainability, but to regenerative agriculture. The loss of natural habitats poses, I would say it's not an exaggeration to say it poses an existential threat to businesses and to people and to our farming community. Some of you will have seen the latest State of Nature report, and it makes for really stark reading. So UK species on average have declined by 20%. 20% since the 1970s. Close to 1 in 6 species is now at risk of extinction. More than 40 million birds have disappeared from the UK's skies, again since the 1970s. Only 1 in 14 woodlands, 1 in 5 peatlands is deemed to be in a healthy ecological state. And I know lots of us will have heard these numbers, but actually just pausing to feel what that means for the UK's natural habitats is, it's very tough to take. And that's why at the partnership we feel a sense of moral compulsion to act, to play our part in a national, and we hope ultimately an international effort to develop new ways to operate that not only stop degrading, but start restoring our natural habitats. And it's no exaggeration to say that there is no more important issue, be that for the planet or be that for the partnership. The stated purpose of the John Lewis Partnership is to work in partnership for a happier world. And unlike any conventional business, our business practices are guided by a constitution. So we have a 34-page constitution that guides the way we operate, that has legal force. And we're forbidden from maximising profit, but instead we are required to prioritise the interests of our customers, our suppliers, our partners, our communities through partnership. And partnership is the key word, and a key word today. Partnership with other grocers, erstwhile competitors, with suppliers, with government, with financial institutions, and with the public. And that will be key to developing a food system that ultimately supports nature. A system that produces high quality, nutritious food for all, enables wildlife to thrive on and around our farms, takes carbon out of our atmosphere, and locks it into healthy soils. Now, many people will say, and Mark talked about being I would say a sort of cautious optimist, but people will say it's an impossible task. The consequences of inaction are too far into the future for people really to care today. People will never pay. Look, we're in a cost of living crunch. The innovation simply isn't there to make the commercial case stack up. Shareholders and business leaders and lots of people I speak to, my counterparts, who have accidentally tripped into culture wars over net zero or seen others trip up, may be wary of straying into new controversy. And these concerns are perfectly understandable. And at Waitrose, we are only too aware of the intense pressures facing the farming community today, whether that's extreme weather or higher input costs, or the new relationship with Europe post-Brexit, or labour shortages and changed public payments and subsidies. And it's perhaps unsurprising that the NFU, in its latest annual survey, found confidence amongst the farming community at such low levels. But at the same time, I sense there is a growing awareness amongst the public, particularly the younger generation, of the criticality of protecting nature. And they're already encouraging examples of farmers operating in ways that are supporting nature. I read Gabe Brown's book this weekend and couldn't take it down. Couldn't put it down. And the fact that we are so privileged to hear from somebody who is inspirational at the forefront of change this afternoon. And then if I step right back, and if you take a sweep of history, history has shown time and time again that necessity has proven itself to be the mother of invention. from the wheel that enabled the mechanization of agriculture, the printing press that promoted widespread literacy, the Industrial Revolution that transformed productivity and growth, the digital revolution more recently that's given us instant access to the world's information and connectivity. All these advances would previously been unimaginable, and yet they became game changers. Agriculture has already been through 3 agricultural revolutions, from hunting and gathering to the first early farms, then to more intense farming using less land and the early adoption of chemical fertilizers, then on to the green revolution using newer technology and producing higher yields. And now we're willing on a 4th pro-nature agricultural revolution, powered by further technological change, but also human ingenuity. So what can Waitrose do? We're not the biggest player, 5% of the market in the UK, but we believe we can have an outsized voice. You'll hear a slightly louder voice from Waitrose over the coming months. We want to act as a catalyst for change within a wider movement of supermarkets, farmers, suppliers, financial institutions, government and the public in the UK, but also internationally, as this is fundamentally about rewiring the entire global food system. Raising consciousness, but not preaching, promoting informed choice, but not dictating what people eat, putting our money where our mouth is by investing in regenerative agriculture right here in Leckford, one of the most exciting programs that we have anywhere in the partnership, testbed for innovation, and we want to support our farmers to do the same. We're not perfect, but we are trying, and we're trying really hard. And we definitely feel a sense of urgency and a sense of what I would call sort of kind of positive impatience. Speed & Lewis was 100 years ahead of his time in conceiving a model of a business that was a kinder form of capitalism and caring of the environment. 100 years later, sitting in his patch, we have the same overwhelming sense of responsibility, working in partnership with others to take on Speeden's mantle. The same foresight, the same forthrightness as Speeden to change the world and to change our natural environment. Ambition and humility for the task ahead. And now I'm going to pass on to James. And we deed back to Mark before James. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, so I'll be brief. I'm delighted to introduce James, Executive Director of Waitrose and a member of the Partnership's Executive Committee. What interests me about James is when he was in his previous role at Sainsbury's, his personal achievements including pioneering well-being, but also switching Sainsbury's milk supply to a cost of production system, which makes perfect sense to everybody, doesn't it? Why would you not do that? Whilst he's here, he is leading transparency of the supply chain and net zero, and I'm really excited to introduce James. James.
Morning, everyone. Thank you. I don't have any notes because I'm going to be speaking for about 2 minutes at this point, but I will be back on stage a couple of times. So hold your horses. A really, really warm welcome to the farm. We got lucky with the weather, as a few people have already said, which is good. I've been in one of these tents when it's been baking hot and when it's been a monsoon outside, and neither you want to be in. So this is just about perfect, so let's hope it stays here. I've got a really easy job to begin with, which is to introduce you to a couple of my team. When we were thinking about how to use the time together, because we know your time is very precious, we wanted to make sure actually that you felt that you were up to date with where the business is, because we see everyone in this room as part of our business. You are partners in the same way that we are partners in the partnership. We could not be doing what we're doing without all of your work. And we don't often get the chance to share the room with all of you. And so we felt it was really important when we did that you had all the information you needed about how Waitrose was doing and some of our plans looking forward, so you could be confident and proud, I hope, of the work you do to supply us, and optimistic and excited about the direction I think we can all head in together. So on that note, I will hand you over to my commercial director, Charlotte DiCello. Thank you.
Morning, everyone. It's nice to see some familiar faces on some of the visits that I've done over my 3 years. And for those that I don't know, so Charlotte, Commercial Director for Waitrose. So my job title is Commercial Director, but my mission and what I think my job is to prove that business can be good. So some of you will have heard me say this before, but this is what gets me out of bed in the morning, and I think this is really, what Waitrose is about. So as Commercial Director, and yes, I am a foodie accountant. I am literally in my dream job, but it's not just a commercially successful enough business with a strong P&L and balance sheet and cash flow and all those genuinely important things. The same goes for you guys as well. But it's the way that you do it. And I think now more than ever, the way that we do business, and the word good needs to be much more holistic, and it goes much beyond just the pure numbers on a page. And the business of food, it's a really powerful one, and I do feel kind of a burden of responsibility, kind of like, working for a supermarket, particularly one like Waitrose, that's sat in the middle of this very, very powerful end-to-end food chain that you play such a critical part in. Getting this virtual circle working is incredibly powerful. It is what is needed now more than ever, I think, but we all are facing extraordinary challenges. It feels like from literally every single direction. So how do we work together to get this food chain, this very, very powerful food chain, working in the way that it needs? So I'd like to think that an even more successful Waitrose is what the world needs right now. But I'm very conscious, particularly looking at you guys, that actually a successful Waitrose is almost literally built on a successful set of British farmers and British growers, because that is literally where it starts. So you'll hear much more today about how we can continue to work with you even more. And I know the relationships with many of you are 20, 30, 40 years plus, but how we can work more with you, but then also our role to make sure that we are communicating with our customers. How can we get them to value the food that they are eating every single day even more? We've got to get this holistic food system working. So very conscious, it's not just about us, it's about all of us and how we can work together to do what literally needs to be done now. So as James said, I'm just going to spend a few minutes just talking about how we as a business are doing. We all need to have, sustainable businesses. We all need to make, a living, but we need to do it in a much healthier way, healthier for the planet. We need to have healthy business, and we also, as people and humanity need to be healthier as well. So I'll just spend a few minutes just talking about how we as a Waitrose business are performing. Hopefully you'll agree that we are in increasingly good shape. We've got some really good momentum behind us, which is a lot of the oxygen that we are going to disproportionately invest in helping this food chain do what it needs to do. So 2023, I'd always hoped it was going to be a real turning point and a point of inflection, and I'm pleased to say that I think it is exactly that. Our sales were up 5%, so 7.7 billion. So as Sharon says, we might only be 5% of the market, but we're a meaningful scale business, and we are growing. But you'll say, well, there was loads of inflation, Charlotte, and yes, there was. So this graph here is showing volume. So this is the amount of product that we've been selling over the last period in time, and you can see the Waitrose inflection swoosh, our own version of the Nike swoosh, kind of like played out in terms of the amount of volume that we were selling to customers. The black line on there is the market. So pleased to say that actually over the course of the last part of last year, and it definitely continues on into this year, we are outperforming the market in terms of what we are selling. So it's great to see that momentum coming through in terms of more customers coming to us and buying more great quality product from Waitrose. Customers, selling more things to more customers and doing it in much more sustainably profitable ways is very simply the gig. And we have 1 million more customers coming into Waitrose now than what we did a year ago, and that number continues to grow. So that's 8% up, 8% more customers last year than what we had the previous year, and that is a record number of customers for Waitrose, full stop. So we've got more and more people coming into the building, more and more people for us to engage in terms of great quality product. And doing it more profitably. As I say, this is a lot of the oxygen that we need to then reinvest into getting this food system to be working. So you'll have heard that the partnership is back in profit and great, and Waitrose absolutely leading the charge on that. £170 million more trading operating profit last year, and we have used a lot of that to invest in large part into our prices, cost of living crisis, and ensuring that we are offering great value for money. We are definitely not, champing a race to the bottom on price. We are about good value for money. We're not about cheap. We're about good value for money, and that's really resonated with customers. A lot of that investment gone into produce and healthier food, and there's a big catalyst behind some of that volume growth on the chart that I showed before. How we curate and bring to life some of the fantastic food that we've got as well. We have, pulled together things like our #1 meal deal. Resonates really, really well with customers. Our food to go meal deal, so £5, very, very Waitrose in terms of salt beef sandwich, but Diet Coke and McCoy salt and vinegar crisps, there you go. That's your typical Waitrose customer. But we've got almost 250,000 customers buying into that deal every single week, and a lot of those customers are new. So a lot of those million new customers are coming in because we're doing a better job at curating some of the fantastic quality and offering great value for money. And we had our best ever Valentine's meal deal as well. Lots of you in the room as well had contributing products to that one as well. So value for money. It's not about us being cheap. It's about being good value for money. New channels. It's not just shops. We've got a very meaningful .com operation, almost 13% of our sales, but also channels like Uber and Deliveroo. Last week, £4 million worth of sales, largely incremental, going through these extra channels. And on top of that, we've got Shells and Wake on Breaks. Lots of you have probably driven past some of those on your way down here, as well as selling Waitrose products through partners like Dobbies, of which we've got almost 50 of those. So actually, lest we forget, Waitrose is available in many, many different locations and channels, as well as actually over 40 countries internationally as well. So again, our reach is much, much beyond our 330 physical Waitrose stores. But growing. So Uber and Deliveroo, double year on year, and definitely going in an upwards trajectory. Product, it's at the core of what we do. Brand and own brand. How many of you got a pistachio egg? I definitely wasn't one of them. Absolutely sold out like hotcakes over Easter. Last week as well, the partnership with Wild Farm, who I think might be in the room today last week, and our own very Leckford loaf. So just a few examples, and we want more and more of this stuff to come through in terms of fantastic quality sourced food that is delicious hitting our shelves. And it's always nice to get an award, isn't it? We like to think that what we put on our shelves is of great quality, but it's always nice when that's kind of independently confirmed by lots of others, whether it's Good Housekeeping, Winner Christmas dinner, last Christmas, wine, and if you haven't tried the Leckford Brut, it is genuinely outstanding. But making sure that we don't lose sight. So investing in prices, but definitely not wavering on that quality. And a huge part of that, and Sharon touched on it earlier, is that we lead the way on animal welfare, not just in the UK, but arguably in the world for men. We have done for a long time, and we need to do more. But I guess our commitment, and hopefully you'll have seen over the last year, how we need to get more credit for our leading animal welfare. So a campaign that we launched last year in terms of no compromise. And that's something that I'm really proud of in terms of animal welfare. It's not just the primal stuff. It's also in the sandwiches. So it's an example there of the repackaging that we did in January to really overtly call out the fact this is the highest animal welfare So it's not just in primal, it's in sandwiches, it's in stocks, it's in ready meals. When we say no compromise, it is higher animal welfare in all of our products. Like, we don't cherry pick, it's no compromise. And our commitment to the best of British, and we're just starting to come into kind of like, the height of the British season in lots of ways. So again, examples there of mushrooms. You can't not know that these are fantastic quality British mushrooms. We much more overt communication with our packaging. Online, we have a button to take you to our British products. And again, going back to that, how do we curate and help customers, enjoy the best of British products? How to eat asparagus. If you haven't tried, by the way, Ottolenghi's green harissa with tahini, it's a brilliant partner with British asparagus that's just coming out now. As well as, at the top end, it's super expensive to eat out right now, but actually, do you know what? You can enjoy, the best steak and chips. Our Côte de Boeuf there is genuinely an outstanding product of the highest welfare, all the way through to our wonderfully wonky veg. So the full spectrum of best of British. Some examples here of how we are doing good. So our business is in root health and on the up, but actually some examples of how we are doing it maybe behind the scenes. And you might have seen some of our powered tractors kind of out and about, and our biomethane plant, which is now powering said tractors. Arguably highlight of the day. I actually had a little ride in one. I managed to do a 3-point turn. Your cars are all fine, by the way. And I guess what we do to help others, and 2% of all our Dutchy retail proceeds go to support the King's Charitable Foundation. And again, last year, over 30 years, celebrating over £40 million that have gone into so many worthy causes. Ditto with the foundation, another one of our kind of like best kept secrets that I'd love for more people to know. We've got about 130 products, and since the foundation was created in 2005, almost £20 million that again we've invested. And last year we announced £1 million of that going into support climate change, to support agriculture through our foundation work. Another recent example as well, we've partnered with Tony's Open Chain, so the sourcing of cocoa and slave-free, so another exciting first UK retailer to be partnering with Tony's, so our own brand chocolate, you'll see has got the little Open Chain logo on it now. So just a few examples then, just to kind of like highlight, our business is doing good. It's got momentum behind it, and a few examples of how we are doing it in a good way. But I guess you'd be sitting there thinking, well, what now? So much more headroom to go after. I know some of my team are in the room. There is a lot of headroom for this brand. There's a lot of headroom still to get after for this business, and I'm impatient. So it really is onwards and upwards now. We've got some fantastic momentum behind us. And I'm not going to go through all of this distilled kind of like sort of plan on a page in our strategy, other than to highlight the top part of this, because this for me is the stuff that makes Waitrose Waitrose. It's fantastic quality with great service, with ethics and sustainability. And I guess the top part of it there in terms of passionate partners serving food lovers. And I do genuinely include you guys when I say the word partners, in terms of how do we get all of this passion in this room and in Waitrose, serving our customers that love food, but how do we get them to fall in love with food and value food even more than they do today? And the power of the food system. We have to transform the food system. We need to get it working. So just to highlight that these are the things that make us us. These are the things that we collectively need to work together on, because it's what the world needs right now. So I'll go back to where I started. Actually, I've got one more thing here in terms of some more numbers from the numbers person. Waitrose 70-10. So you're asking, well, what does 70-10 mean? So 70-10 is our way of saying our ambition is up here. We are a £7.7 billion business. We've got 51 million units a week that we are selling through our stores. But our ambition is not to do a bit better. It's to do a lot better. And we've got line of sight in the next few years for us to be a 70 million unit a week business and a sales number that starts with a 10 billion pounds plus. So we've shortened that down to Waitrose 7010. And I guess that's the ambition for us in terms of we want to grow, but we want to grow in a positive, good way, and we want to do that together with you. So I'm going to extend my job description kind of like out to you and say, let us prove that business can be good and do it together and get this food system really motoring and doing what it needs to do. So with that, a person that knows a lot about good is Nathan, who's our customer director. So he's going to talk to you a little bit around the customer end of our food system.
Right, good morning, everyone. How are we? Warm enough? It's heating up. What time is the monsoon, Andrew? Can't be far off. We are all customer obsessed at Waitrose. So before I get into the presentation today, I just thought we should hear from one or two of our customers.
I will say the ingredients in Waitrose is second to none, and it is stuff that we can equally buy of that quality and cook in the restaurant. It's that good.
This is so juicy. It's so gorgeous, Angela.
Can I say it smells gorgeous in here?
Oh.
Good gracious me, that's amazing.
Oh, look at this.
Oh, wow.
I love Waitrose.
Yeah.
This is really scrumptious.
Never mind, I'll find a potato like you.
They're from Waitrose.
Of course. Bought from Waitrose. You get it.
I love a bit of Waitrose. Right?
This is like the greatest podcast ever.
Right?
Oh, yes.
So if you're not one of the 8 million customers who listens to Dish on a regular basis, I would suggest you tune in. It's good. It's a bit of fun, a bit of foodie fun, worth listening to. But when you hear world-renowned 3-star Michelin chef referring to Waitrose foods in that way, I don't know about you, but it makes you feel super proud, right? Really, really proud. And I think it's testimony to the work that all of the people in this room do on a daily basis. So I just wanted to say a massive personal thank you to every single person in this room and all of your teams who made that happen. So thank you. I've been fortunate to be involved in a number of brand transformations over the years, and I think the energy in Waitrose, and hopefully you're getting a little bit of it today, is just phenomenal right now. And whether it's our incredible products that Charlotte taught you through, our passionate partners, the growth in our communities, both online and in store, or frankly, special initiatives like this, this is a business that's got its mojo, and it's incredibly exciting. You can feel it across Waitrose and across the partnership. There are 3 things that I really wanted to just kind of touch on today. One is a little bit, I haven't got time to talk you through the customer strategy, but a little bit about our customer base and the growth headroom, importantly, that we see in our customer base going forward. The second bit is the centrality of this activity in our plans going forward. And also kind of longer term, the plans we've got to kind of build a moat around the Waitrose brand and build what we kind of sometimes call high integrity growth for the future. And those words, high integrity growth, are super, super important. And it starts with our customers, right? So it starts with customers, and we are a little bit customer obsessed, as I said, and we are very invested in having a really solid strategic understanding of our customers. And I'm just going to talk through a tiny, tiny bit of what that looks like today. So we understand our customers, I think, better than we ever have done. We've got a very, very strong core customer base, which is fantastic. So most brands, and certainly most retailers, would frankly kill for metrics like ours on things like trust, brand affinity, ethics, sustainability, service, which is fantastic. And we've grown just over 1 million customers year on year, which is also superb. Now, the kind of interesting thing and the sort of quite good thing is our customers today are quite heavily concentrated into a relatively small group. So you can see on the chart here, about 9% of our customers contribute best part of half our sales, which is interesting. They're incredibly loyal, incredibly passionate, and visit us very, very frequently, taking up to £9 in every 10 they spend on their grocery shopping. Okay, so what about the rest of them then? Well, I think this is the really interesting and potentially very, very exciting bit for us. So the other kind of 91% or so of our customers also make up about half our sales, so you don't need to be a mathematician to kind of work that out. But the interesting thing about this group is they do a lot of their shopping elsewhere. They love our brand enormously. They value what we do, they enjoy the service and the customer experience, but for one reason or another, they don't visit us as frequently as they could. So the white space on that kind of pie chart on the chart there, that's the headroom we've got for growth just with our existing customers today. So even if we didn't stop attracting new customers into the Waitrose family, and I hope we do continue to adopt some new customers, even if we just had the customers we have today, the opportunity for growth with those customers is huge. Now, the really good thing is we are crystal clear by customer group and by sub-segment what we need to do to remove the barriers to shopping more frequency and also to encourage customers to come and visit us more often, those frequency triggers that we talk about. We spend a lot of time doing that. So lots of headroom, and we kind of know what to do. So Charlotte talked a bit about our compete strategy earlier. This is what we call our category of one, and it houses basically three main things. It's our customer target and strategy. So we're really clear that food lovers are our target customers. So that's the group that we're going to kind of build the future of the business for. Doesn't mean we won't attract other customers into the Waitrose franchise over a period of time, but it's people who love food, care about food, and have some degree of shared values with us. We're really clear on our brand strategy. And then importantly, the compete strategy. As Charlotte said, passionate partners serving food lovers is really, really important part of what we do. So we are a partnership, we're co-owners in the business, and that enables us to go above and beyond and investing in things that, frankly, other people wouldn't be able to invest in. And we think that's a really important differentiator for us. And you can see here on the left-hand side the four kind of main things that make up the win part of our compete strategy. And the food system transformed is absolutely front and center of everything we're going to be doing going forward, and it's critically important. So as I said, we have a very incredibly strong brand, but we know we've got some challenges as well. And sometimes customers have perceived us as being a little bit more expensive than others. So that's one of the barriers that we've been removing over the last couple of years. So we've invested heavily into price, and we've communicated that very, very boldly, and that's been incredibly effective for us in terms of driving that frequency. We've been quite disruptive about how we do it. My team have been having a bit of fun, actually. This was a wonky billboard that we put up a few weeks ago just to kind of dramatise the reductions in prices. Unfortunately, Wandsworth Council slightly got the wrong end of the stick and ended up putting bollards all around it because they actually thought it was going to fall off the wall. It didn't happen. We didn't hurt anyone, but it was just a bit of fun. But being disruptive and energetic in our communication is really important. But it isn't just about price, right? Price is a really important part of the mix, but what's really important is values. And I'm delighted to say, number one for animal welfare is a good example of when we put our mind to it and we communicate boldly with our customers, we can really drive perceptions and get those messages out there. And we just need to do more of that, which is kind of why we're here today. Now, one of the things that's important about this is customers are increasingly becoming interested in their food and where it comes from. So I could have put up any number of press articles from the last week or the last year in terms of what the press are writing about the food industry, because we know that sometimes and in some areas the kind of food industry's gone a little bit bad in some areas, and customers are noticing and they're caring. But I chose this. It's from Lad Bible, right? So this isn't some sort of specialist publication from a particular group. Lots of customers are getting more and more interested and really, really caring about where their foods come from. We think that's an opportunity for us going forward, and it cements everything we're doing about doing the right thing for customers. So food to feel good about has been our line for some time. It's something we're going to continue to double down on and focus on, because we believe that no one can say good so often about so many different things with so much heart. So our ambition from a communications perspective is to own the word good and everything it stands for. So we want to make sure that when customers pick up a dictionary and look up the word good, they find Waitrose, and when they pick up a dictionary and look up Waitrose, they find the word good. And we're going to own that word and everything that's behind it. It's going to be our word, and we want customers to know that when they shop with us, they make a positive choice, and we want them to deeply care about where their food comes from and the background story to what they eat and feed their families. So we've already started, very early days in the kind of campaign journey, but we've already started, and hopefully you've noticed some of our communication being a bit bolder, a bit more disruptive, and a bit more engaging. And we've got a long way to go, but we've made a good start so far. And we're starting to see some really positive improvements in metrics. So not only customer growth, but really importantly, perceptions are beginning to improve, which is fantastic, and grow over a period of time. These metrics are really hard to move, and they're beginning to really, really shift now. But it's importantly, we have customers, not just more customers, but customers coming in and shopping with us more often. So they're choosing to turn left to us and not right somewhere else increasingly, which is really important. So we're beginning to build some very, very strong foundations going forward. And talking of going forward, how are we going to bring this to life? Well, there are three main things that I want us to be thinking about in terms of how we're going to tell more of our stories more emphatically. The first is really important, which is our store renewal program. So James announced a few weeks ago we're going to be investing heavily into our shop, so nearly £1 billion over the next number of years, which is fantastic. That's a great opportunity to not only improve the customer experience, but also tell more of our stories at the point of purchase, which is where you've got a little bit of downtime with customers and they're making choices. So great opportunity for us to do more in that space. We've also got the whole customer experience to think about. So today we live in an online world, so it's everything from Insta, we've got Waitrose Farmers Instagram account. We've got Instagram posts now that are getting over 50 million views on one single Instagram post. Massive opportunity for us to communicate in a more engaging way with our customers. And then finally, sort of broadcast comms, making Waitrose Stands for Good a bigger and more important part of everything we do. But we've got to be focused, right? So the analogy I always use in my team is the tennis ball analogy. If I throw you one tennis ball, though I'm not going to do it, you'll catch it. If I try and throw you two, you might catch two. If I try and throw you 20, you probably won't catch any of them. You might have a bit of fun, but you probably won't catch any of them. So my ask of us is that we are super focused about what we want to communicate to customers, and we pick the things that matter most. And perhaps most importantly, almost like write the book backwards, think about what we want customers to think, feel, and do right at the beginning, and then write the book back in that guide. So really focused on our customer comms. But this is just the beginning. So from today, you'll see, pick up a copy of Waitrose Weekend. We've got an open letter in there from James. Loads of exclusive features and interviews. We've got social activity all across our Waitrose channels, highlighting products, farmers and partners. We've got loads of internal communication going on as well, which is really important. We've got 50,000 partners who are out there with customers day in, day out, talking to customers. Launch of Wild Farm Bread, influencers, Clarkson's Farm, in-store pop-ups. There's loads going on over the next few weeks, and we're going to be highlighting the harvest at Leckford with partners working with influencers on the farm, on activities, including things like grape picking and harvesting wild farm wheat. And there's loads more to come in this space. So we'd love to hear your ideas. We're going to be bringing media, podcasts, radio, TV, under wraps a little bit at the moment, but we'd love to hear your thoughts going forward. So that's just the beginning. Look out for it. And I really would ask everyone in this room to really engage and amplify the content that you see going out over the next few weeks. So finally, I just want to pull the camera back a little bit, and remember that wind triangle that Charlotte showed you earlier? There's just a short film to bring to life our strategy on passionate partners serving food lovers.
Food. We all eat to live, but some of us live to eat. Food isn't just something we eat, it's something we...
Delicious.
Oh. Good food's an experience. So why is the experience of supermarkets so... not super? At Waitrose, we're passionate partners serving food lovers. No, not food snobs. More like this, or this, and 100% this.
Salt, sweet, spicy.
In fact, we believe that whatever you eat should be good.
It's so good.
From a bacon butty to beans on toast to weeknight bolognese. Because the only ingredient you really need for good food is good people. People who care about where our food comes from and how it was raised. People who care about what you're buying and what you're making. People who help get your food to the front door, sometimes even through it. We're changing how we turn up in the world. We're owning what good means. So let's stop thinking of ourselves as just premium grocers and start believing in who we really are. Food experience partners.
Scotch egg but with chocolate spread.
What?
That is sensational.
I really like it.
So good.
So join us. Let's make something good together. Because while other supermarkets can sell you food to fill you up, only Waitrose serves you food to feel good about.
So put simply, we've got an incredible brand, we've got loads of headroom for growth, and today's initiative is front and centre of our plans going forward. So we're very excited to share the future with you, and let's do some more good together. Thank you very much.
Wow, those figures, they weren't just good, they were great. They're great figures. And the reflections from me, really briefly, economy and ecology, we've kind of pulled them apart and put them in opposition to one another. They come from the same word. Eco comes from the Greek word oikos, meaning home. It's about keeping our house in order, financially and environmentally. You can't make money on a dead planet, and you can't grow food on a dead planet, and we all know that. We're going to be back in about 20, 25 minutes. If we can come back at was it 11:50, 11:35, we'll come back in. But right now, you've got some time to go out, experience the stands. You've got Benhamon's Biogas a little bit further away, and there will be some amazing coffee, tea, and snacks. Thank you for your attention.
Okay.
I was in London yesterday, and my hay fever's kicked in. You all got a bit of early hay fever, anyone? Do you know why hay fever is bad over the last 50, 60 years? Do you know why it's accentuated? It's really interesting. This is all down to the patriarchy, and it's all down to the urban planning guides. So in 1947, Town and Country Planning Act, 1949 in the US, it was decided that a preferred choice of tree for urban environments would be the male tree, because it drops less, well, no seed pods, and it drops less other stuff, but it has stronger pollen. So because of an urban design guide, we all have slightly worse hay fever. I live in the middle of the countryside in Ashby-de-la-Zouch in Leicestershire. I never have hay fever until I come to the city, and that's why. So there you go, that was free, that piece of information. I'm so excited to invite James back up on stage, actually. We've got a really great session coming up, and I'm going to hand over to James, who's going to introduce our keynote speaker. James.
Can you hear me? Yeah, oh, God, yeah. I can hear me when you can hear me. So welcome back. Thanks for coming back in so sharply. So I've got a little bit of the bridesmaid's job today, which is I'm never really the main event, which I'm more than happy with. But it's my job again to introduce our next keynote speaker. But before we do, I wanted to put a pin in some of the things you've heard already about our new commitment, Farming for Nature. So I think you've already heard that as a business, collectively, as a partnership, we are convinced of the need for change in the food system. So continuing on the current path risks irrevocably damaging nature, degrading soil health to an irreversible point, and just as importantly, and especially importantly to us, making the life of farming unsustainable, unprofitable, and not something you can hand over to the next generation. And at that point, we're in significant danger in the UK agricultural market. It's been said sometimes that we may actually only have 50 or 60 harvests left if we keep degrading our natural resources at the rate we are doing. And if there's even a half chance, even a small chance that that's true, it should be really clear to everyone involved in the food industry, to everyone, that we can't wait any longer. So really simply, we've decided that we can't wait any longer, and we have an obligation to our customers and, as importantly to us, to you, to our farmers, to change how our food is grown from now onwards. So today we are announcing our Farming for Nature commitment. It is a natural follow-on from our Plan for Nature, which we announced 2 years ago. And we will share more details of this when Andrew and Jemima come on the stage a little bit later. But at its heart, there are two commitments to Farming for Nature. And the first is that and I'm going to have to read this carefully just in case I get told off by my legal department. The first one is really the one that embodies what we're all here to talk to you about today. And that is by 2035, it's our intent to source 100% of our UK fresh food from farms that follow regenerative practices. So within a decade, 100% of our UK farm output to be from farms that follow regenerative practices. Now, there are some caveats, of course. There always are. Not all systems can be regenerative. We know that. But where it can be, where it's possible, that's what we're striving for. That's our commitment today. And secondly, and equally as importantly, that Waitrose and the partnership will invest all of our time, our resources, and our expertise in supporting you, our farmers, on that transition. To be crystal clear up front, I've been told to make this point 2 or 3 times. I'm surprised it needs to be made, but I understand from where you're sitting it probably does. It is not our job to tell you how to farm. It is not our job to tell you how to work your farms. But collectively, we want you to join us in this commitment and accept our support and our help in making this market-leading change. I also want to be really clear that we do not have all of the answers. I'm not standing up here telling you that we have a really clear idea about how to get where we're going in the next decade. I'd also go as far as to say that we don't even have most of the answers, because actually, as far as we can tell, not many people do, or almost no one does. But right now, because no one does, someone is going to have to go first, and to work it out together and set a path for the others to follow. And talking of setting a path for others to follow, as I said, it's my honour to be introducing our keynote speaker. He is widely regarded as one of the founding fathers of regenerative farming, and he's been on a journey of discovery and learning, which was famously captured in his best-selling and award-winning book, Dirt to Soil, one family's journey into regenerative agriculture. So, it's my enormous honour and pleasure to welcome one of the true pioneers of regenerative agriculture. Please give a very, very warm welcome to Gabe Brown.
Well, thank you, James. That was quite an introduction. It's really an honor and a pleasure for me to be here today. You know, when Jonathan and Elizabeth called me and asked if I would consider coming over and addressing you today, I first asked them, well, what's this about? And when they told me what was planned, I knew immediately, there's no way I'm going to miss that. I'm not going to miss an announcement like that, because you need to realize what a shockwave this is going to send throughout the industry and throughout farming and ranching globally. So I had to do it, but Jonathan then put a caveat in there. He said, but Gabe, if you come over, you know, I've read a little bit about North Dakota, and I hear that doesn't rain very much there, and you get a lot of sunshine. So you're welcome, everyone. I followed through on that. So I want to talk to you this morning briefly a bit about the hope that can be found in healthy soil. And I'll tell you a little bit about the journey that my family and I have been on as we've gone down this path to regenerate our soils and our ecosystems. But first, I want to talk to you about some of the challenges that we're facing as society today. Now, one of them that you're focused on, and yes, you're focused a lot more on it, rightfully so, here in the UK than we are in the US, but it's that of climate change. And I tell you, I was asked during the break here, are you seeing any effects of climate change on your ranch? So our family's ranch is located in central North Dakota, almost the center of North America. And I said, well, you tell me if we've had change. We just went through 2020, 2021, 2022. We went through the 3 driest years in recorded history there. Then the next year, 2023, we had the harshest winter ever recorded. And now 2024, we had the 3rd mildest winter ever recorded. Is that due to climate change? Well, I think so. I think so. Now, what else are we seeing? I took this photo, and I have the good fortune, I spend the majority of my time traveling all over the world. I'm literally on hundreds of farms and ranches around the world every year. This is but a half an inch of rainfall, and look, we can't even infiltrate that into the soil. What does that lead to? That leads to multiple negative compounding, cascading effects downstream. We see floodings in cities. We also see negative impact with water quality issues. And I know how important water quality is here in the UK. We see this over and over, and it's having a direct negative effect on the communities. What we're also seeing is we're seeing a degradation of our rural communities. You know, as farming has become more challenging, profit has been squeezed, that's having a negative impact on our communities. Another impact we see is that of what I call a human health crisis. You know, take a look at society today. Marked increases, ADD, ADHD, cancer, Alzheimer's, autoimmune diseases. The list goes on and on. This has been compounding at an alarming rate. Now, I'm going to talk to you a bit about something else and the real cause for climate change. Quite frankly, we need to change that. It's degradation. Climate change, in my opinion, is a direct result of mankind's action towards our environment. I see this over and over as I travel. This picture is actually not that old. It was just taken a couple of years ago. We see it over and over. Mankind's actions are having a negative impact on the ecosystem, hence the climate. Now, I have a question. How many farmers in the room? Okay, that's great. So, the question I have for you is, are you satisfied with your soils? You know, I travel around as a consultant a lot, and we go on to a farmer's place. The first thing they tell me is, but Gabe, you don't understand. My soils aren't like that. I said, okay, let's take a look. So what you see on the screen here is 3 soil beds. So one of these beds is from a farm field where the farmer grows 11 different cash crops in the rotation. Cover crops between every cash crop. Another one of the beds is from a farm that only grows 2 different cash crops. No cover crops. The third bed is simply from the edge of the field. It's in perennials, maybe grazed by wild animals occasionally, ran over by equipment, but that's the only influence of mankind. Which bed is which? Well, the bed on the far right, obviously, is from the farm that only grows 2 different cash crops. The bed in the middle is from the farm that grows 11 different cash crops and cover crops. The bed on the left is from the edge of the field with no management. Now you might say, well, Gabe, that makes sense. That area was in perennials. But would you believe all 3 of these beds I dug within 100 feet of each other? 100 feet of each other, and they're all the same soil type. The only difference you see is management, or as I prefer to call it, our stewardship. It's our stewardship that makes the difference. Every single decision you make on your farm has either positive compounding effects or negative compounding effects. And the beautiful thing is we can change that soil. So this is a picture taken from our ranch in North Dakota. We ranch about 6,000 acres. We have a couple thousand acres of arable land. The rest is in perennials. Truth be told, I did not grow up on a farm or ranch. I grew up in the city. But I took an interest in agriculture at a young age, started working on farms. Then I happened to marry my college sweetheart, who was from a farm, and she'll tell everybody that she married a city kid to get away from the farm. Little did she know that she still holds that against me. It'll be 43 years in a couple weeks, and she still holds it against me. I learned to farm from my father-in-law, who was very conventional in his practices. He summer followed half of his cropland, arable land, planted crops, all small grains, spring wheat, oats, barley, on the other half. Now, my father-in-law loved to till. Recreational tillage, I called it. He just loved to till. Matter of fact, I took this photo after he retired. When he retired, he kept that tractor, and he went and bought a brand new disc, and he went and disced for the neighbors for free. I wonder with the cost of fuel today if you'd still do that. But, you know, now I have to tell you, of course, immediately after taking over the farm, I switched to no-till, which I'll talk about, and went 100% zero-till. Well, that just really bothered my father-in-law. And it's a good thing he loved his daughter, or he would have kicked me out, no doubt. So the ironic thing is, I went no-till. Guess what I got in his will when he passed away? It wasn't the tractor. I would have taken that, but it was the disc. It lasted 2 weeks before I sold it. So in 1994, I bought this no-till drill, and truth be told, I could not afford to buy the drill and own all the tillage equipment. So I sold all my tillage equipment. Then I was bought in. I was committed. And that's what I love about what Waitrose put forward today. They are committed. And it takes commitment to make a real change. So first year, 94, I went no-till, had a beautiful bumper crop, and I thought, this is easy. I got it made. 1995 came along, and I had 1,200 acres of spring wheat in. I was going to combine. The night before I was going to start combining, we lost 100% of our crop to hail. That was pretty devastating on a young family starting out, and, you know, banker wasn't too happy. I couldn't pay all the loan back. 1996 came along. I started to diversify my crop rotation a little bit, but before I started combining, we got hailed out again, lost 100% of our crop. So then things were getting pretty tough. My wife and I took off-farm jobs. You know, we had bills to pay. But thankfully, we were able to make it with some livestock, able to keep going. 1997 came along, and I was diversifying the rotation a little bit more, but it didn't do any good. We had a major drought in the area. Nobody combine harvested an acre in 1997. So 3 years, no crop to sell. I tell you, I was getting pretty desperate. But I was starting to see some subtle changes to my land. What happens after hailstorm? You're laying a lot of biomass on the soil surface. My no-till drill could seed through that easily. I started noticing some earthworms showing up. My father-in-law, he could never go fishing because you'd never find an earthworm on that whole farm with all his tillage. But I was starting to see some things. I was starting to diversify the crop rotation. What do you do when the bank isn't going to loan you money to buy fertilizer inputs? Well, I got to grow more legumes so we can fix that atmospheric nitrogen through rhizobia. I started to think a little bit, I would call more holistically. 1998 come along, and that's an actual photo that I took moments before this happened. So we actually lost 80% of our crop that year, so it wasn't a total failure. But 4 years, 4 natural disasters. Now, the ironic thing is, the neighbors around me, there was one neighbor who was hit with 3 of those. Several were hit with 2 of those, but we were the only ones that had all 4. You know, now, I have to be honest, I was starting to question a little bit my choice of occupations, and I'm sure my wife's story. The end of 4, and I tell people today, those 4 years were extremely hard to go through. I pray no one else has to go through 4 years like that, but in all honesty, they were the best thing that could have happened to me and my family. And the reason was, we started to notice a real change in our soil. So on that spade, that's a shovelful of my soil, and then the ped up front is the neighbor's soil, just across the fence line. This proved to me that it's management. Your farm is a direct reflection of you. So all those people I visit, when they tell me, but Gabe, you don't understand, our farm isn't like that, I said, well, do you have soil? Yeah. What's your soil made up of? Well, it's either sandy or it's silt or it's clay, various fractions thereof, held together by biotic glues. That's all soil is. You know, people think I'm so smart. No, I know sand, silt, clay, biotic glues. That's it. That's all there is. In 1998, as I was going through that, I attended a conference, and there was a rancher from Canada there, and he made this statement, and it really changed my life, because he said, if you want to make small changes, change the way you do things. But if you want to make major changes, change the way you see things. And I'm going, Gabe, the good Lord was trying to tell you to change the way you see things. Those hailstorms and that drought were really lessons in how soil functions. It's just obviously he thought I was a slower learner than my neighbors, so it happened 4 times to me. Then I also read books. I'm an avid reader. Masanabu wrote a book, and he said in it, there's this quote, "An object seen in isolation from the whole is not the real thing." And I think of how when I was farming conventionally, I was focused on that cash crop. I was focused on my cow herd, but I wasn't looking at the whole farm as an ecosystem. And we really have to do that. And I think that's the commitment that Waitrose is making. They understand that we are an ecosystem. The farm, your farm, the crops you grow, the livestock you raise, is directly related to the goods that they sell, is directly related to the health of the community and the health of the people in that community. So back when I went down this journey, the word regenerative agriculture wasn't really out there. It was used a little bit, but it wasn't mainstream. Now today, you can hardly pick up a farm publication without there being some reference to regenerative agriculture. And that's a good thing. I tell people, I've been on this path 30 plus years. I've seen more change in the last 3 years than I have the previous 27 combined. It is really accelerating at a fast pace. The beautiful thing about regenerative agriculture is that anywhere where there's soil, we can regenerate. And I tell people, those hundreds of farms and ranches I'm on, I have never, ever stood on a single one, including my own, that's not degraded. You see, we can't talk about sustainability. Why in the world would we want to sustain a degraded resource? That doesn't make any sense. We have to be regenerative so that future generations may have the opportunity to be sustainable. So what is the definition of regenerative agriculture? This is the definition that I prefer. It's farming and ranching in synchrony with nature to repair, rebuild, revitalize, and restore ecosystem function, beginning with all life in the soil, moving to all life above the soil. That's simple, and it's all-encompassing. Can't say it much plainer than that. Regenerative agriculture focuses on 6 principles. There's 6 principles that drive ecosystem function. Those 6 principles I'm going to talk about briefly. First one is context. You have to farm and ranch in your context. Your context here in the UK is quite a bit different than mine in North Dakota. We can get winter there. You get a lot more moisture than us. You have some damper weather than us. Different context. Your financial context is different. Your family context, your community context is different. James said it right. There's no way Waitrose is going to try and tell you how to farm or ranch. There's no way this farmer from North Dakota can tell you how to farm or ranch. But I'll guarantee you one thing. The principles and processes are the same. Your context is different. Then those principles, very briefly, we need to minimize disturbance. We need to maximize armor. We need to increase biodiversity. We need to have continuous living roots in the soil, collecting solar energy, and we have to integrate animals wherever possible, and insects, I'd add. Because by doing that, you're going to drive the 4 ecosystem processes. This occurs on every farm and ranch. The energy cycle, collecting solar energy. It's free. We need to do that. The water cycle, okay? You've been kind of stuck this winter in a cycle of excess amount of moisture because of a disrupted water cycle. The natural nutrient cycle, and that one's key. We've tended to ignore that one. And then, of course, biodiversity, which was talked about. Just briefly highlighting some of those principles. Least amount of disturbance. On our ranch, we have a goal. We never, ever want to mechanically disturb that soil because it's the home for biology. This is planting vegetables into a diverse rolled down cover crop. Armor on the soil. This is what a corn crop looks at like on our ranch, a maize crop seeded into a cover crop. We need to increase diversity. This is one of my polyculture cash crops. At the end of those 4 years, I was $1.5 million in debt. Young family, that's a lot of money in 1998. How did I get out of debt? I grew things that no one else would. So this is a mix of cereal rye, winter triticale, winter wheat, hairy vetch, sweet clover. We grew that all together, seed it in the fall, harvest it the next spring. It's difficult to harvest, but I tell you what, I made a lot of money selling seed off this. But look it's a polyculture cash crop. You get the synergies and the benefits of the diversity. And then in our native pastures, our prairie, we're blessed. We have several thousand acres of what we consider native prairie. It's never been disturbed, never been tilled. By using these adaptive grazing practices, we're able to see biodiversity thrive. We've counted over 140 species, plant species, in our pastures. Then the other thing we've integrated livestock back onto the cropland. We grew a cash crop in this particular photo. We harvested the cash crop. We planted a very diverse cover crop on there, and we're grazing that with grass-finished beef. We also have pastured hogs, laying hens, sheep, turkeys. In the lower left, that's a friend of mine. That's his bison herd being grazed adaptively. What that's done is increase the biodiversity, including pollinators. In 2011, I heard Dr. Jonathan Lundgren, a world-famous entomologist, speak, and he said, for every insect species that's a pest, there's 1,700 that are beneficial. So why, as farmers, do we focus on killing that pest? Let's just provide the home and habitat for the beneficials. I'm proud to say Dr. Lundgren and his team came up this last year and did an insect study on our ranch, and they found that compared to neighboring ranches, we have over 1,000 times more species diversity of insects on our ranch. And if you have insects, you have birds, you have a thriving wildlife population. Ray Archuleta said it best when he said, plant and soil are one. We need to consider them one. We need to understand the relationship that living plants have on our soils. So you ask, how quickly can you regenerate your soils? This is a young man from Kansas that I give him credit. He heard about regenerative ag and he wanted to go down the regenerative path. He went back to his father, farmed very conventionally. He said, Dad, I want to try it. To his father's credit, his father said, okay, we'll take this parcel of land. You farm half how you want. I'm going to farm the other half my way. That's 3 years. Look at the change in that soil. Which of those soil beds has more carbon? Which is going to have more life? We have to understand it's the biology in the soil that drive these systems. Which is going to hold more water, right? Pretty easy to see after 3 years. So this is a photo that, and I always talk about my neighbors, which I know is pretty rude, but I don't feel bad. They're not going to be in attendance. So it's pretty obvious to see my soils, the difference between the neighbors. And it's important to say here, this neighbor, so when I started no-tilling in 1994, I was the first, to my knowledge, full-time no-tiller, 100% in our county. And our county has about 750,000 arable acres. Today, 80+% of the land in that county is no-tilled. So they've done a good job of adopting that. But look, he's been no-till now for 12 years, but look at the differences in the soil still. What's the difference? Not a diversity of a crop rotation, not the seeding of cover crops, and no animal integration. See, if you really want to advance soil health, it's up to you, okay? If you say, this just isn't working, can't be done, Go in the bathroom, look in the mirror, there's your problem, okay? That's pretty bold of me to say, but I'll guarantee you, greatest compaction on any farm or ranch is right up there. Yeah. So here's what we've been able to do on our farm. When my wife and I purchased it, we had 1.7 to 1.9% organic matter on the arable land. We could infiltrate 1/2 inch of rainfall per hour. We started to diversify the cash crop rotation during those years of hail. We saw a slight increase in organic matter. Then we started adding more cover crops, another increase in organic matter. Then we started really going with high diversity, biodiversity, integrating the animals. In 2021, where we had this, last time we had the study taken by a team of scientists, our organic matter levels are from 5.3 to 7.9%. Scientists using a dual head infiltrometer, we can now infiltrate 32 inches of moisture per hour. Now, Bismarck, North Dakota has never, ever in recorded history received 30 inches in a year, let alone 32 inches in an hour. But you don't think that we can improve soil function? We can. And that soil there, we had a team of scientists doing carbon studies. They ran a probe just over 1 meter deep. We had well-aggregated soils over 1 meter deep. Where we once had 3 inches of A-horizon topsoil, we now have 19 inches. It's all management. It's stewardship. And we have to realize it's the biology living in between those pore spaces of soil aggregates that drive the nutrient cycle. Now, here's where it really gets interesting. The rest of this, just so-so. In my mind, this is where it really gets interesting. Do you think there's a difference in the nutrient density of those eggs? Pretty obvious to see. But today, we're able to measure nutrient density. This is Dr. Stefan Van Vliet. That's a mass spectrometer there. The theory we had was that healthy soils equate to healthy plants, healthy animals, and then potentially healthy people. So we're involved with this research where we're identifying farms that are going down the regenerative path, that have been going down it for a while. A team of scientists has come together, including soil scientists, entomologists, nutritionists, those studying biodiversity. And they're taking a look, they're doing soil samples, studying the soil. They're studying the biology in the soil and quantifying and identifying that. They're then following it through to the plants that are being grown. They're looking at the health of that plant, the phytochemical compounds in that plant. Now, we're also identifying directly adjacent to those farms that are using the regenerative practices, farms that are willing to have their farm studied, but they're not going down the regenerative path, they're conventional. Then we're growing the same vegetable, grain, fruit, pastured protein on both ranches. What Dr. Van Vliet and the team are finding is that as you advance soil health, as you advance the biodiversity in the soil, you're increasing dramatically these phytochemical compounds that end up in the food. And those phytochemical compounds are what feeds our gut microbiome. We're moving to human trials on this now. It's very exciting. They can quantify over 2,300 different phytonutrient compounds. And it all equates to the biodiversity and health of that ecosystem. The healthier the ecosystem, the higher the nutrient density in food. We're seeing an increased awareness from consumers. As we have this human health crisis going on, consumers are becoming more and more aware of the importance of where they source their food from. It's leading to an increased demand. I spend the majority of my time now talking to CEOs, boards of directors, heads of companies that want to move their supply chain down the regenerative path. And that's a good thing. I really look at it as common ground for common good. You see, no matter who I talk to, wherever their pain point is it climate change? Is it water quality, water quantity? Is it revitalizing rural communities? Is it human health? Wherever their interest lies, regenerative agriculture is part of the problem. It truly is common good because we can address all of these things, at least in part, by focusing on how us as farmers steward our land. It really comes down to this too. This is a people business. We need to do this, if not for us, for our children, for our grandchildren. Now, I think most importantly, we need to quantify that. We need to validate that. It cannot be greenwashing. The farmers need to be rewarded for the good work they're doing. We need to validate that. We need to prove it. The supply chains that offer their products need to be rewarded for handling those products, and they need to be able to tell our stories to the consumers. Bring it through. And then finally, the consumers themselves. Remember, the reason we have the production model we have is because consumers voted with their buying dollar. They wanted a copious amount of food. Well, they got that. But as was pointed out earlier, you know, Mark said with the tomato, look at the difference in the tomato. We're seeing that. We have degradation now. We have to reverse that. What we really have to do is simple. We have to take dirt and convert it to soil. Thank you.
Questions? Thank you for the work that you do. Amazing. Wow. That was amazing. Truly inspiring. And you can't listen to you and throw any objection up. It just like logic and science win. Oh, and by the way, you got me in the heart, right? So that's
I'm a
what
simple,
really matters.
simple man.
You're not. You're so not. You're so modest. It's untrue. You're amazing. Look, we've got a Q&A session now, and it's a live Q&A session, so we're not using Slido for this. So if you popped a question on Slido, pop it back in your head, right? We're going to have a couple of microphones roving around. And like a good host, I've got a couple of questions lined up. Do I give you the nasty one? No, I won't. I'll give you the nice ones. Did your father-in-law live? Is he still alive?
Yeah, so my father-in-law passed away in 2003, but the whole story is, I'll never forget 2003, I had a maize crop growing, and realize we're all dry land, no irrigation. We get 10 to 12 inches of rainfall a year and another 4 to 5 inches from snow. And we had a corn crop that was unlike anything anyone had had. And he called my wife, asked my wife to get a camera and take a picture of him and my son in that corn. I knew then I finally had him. He passed away a month later, but I had him finally.
That was the answer to the question. That's brilliant. Thank you for that. I really appreciate that. Look, I'm really interested in Regenified because you spoke of this increasing demand from the customer. And I see it, right? We all want to know that we're doing the right thing with the food that we buy for the planet, for us, and also for you lot, right? We all know that it's not fair. We all know that at the moment. How are you going to grow Regenified? And how can you take it internationally?
Yep. Well, that's part of the reason. My partners and I in Understanding Ag, which is our consulting firm, and I apologize, this is not a commercial here, okay? We saw a number of years ago that there was tremendous greenwashing taking place. People were claiming to be regenerative, but we're going, no, they're not advancing ecosystem function. So the only way to combat that, so to speak, is to put our money where our mouth is, and we started a company called Regenified. Regenified's mission then, it uses 65 different tests and observations to validate what each and every one of us who are working so hard on the farms to do. We're validating it so that when the supply chain, when the consumer asks, well, prove this, we have the proof points. But then also what the Regenified team is doing, and Solar, where's Kathleen? I got a couple of the team members, raise your hand, that are with. What they're doing is they're working with supply chains to help create demand with those companies that want our regeneratively grown and raised products. And then what we're also doing is working with consumers to give consumers the authenticity. And then what you have is you have a pull all the way through the supply chain. We have the farmers doing what they're doing, being rewarded by the companies and by lower production costs, which we find with regenerative agriculture. And we have consumers having the confidence and the authenticity that they deserve.
That's brilliant. It's really interesting. I mean, I saw the crop. I saw the 4 different species in one field, and you said it's hard to harvest. And I'm struggling in my head because I'm like a simple fool. How that can be more cost effective to grow like that than it is to grow it in a monoculture. And I know that's my issue. How does that work?
Yeah, take a look at the work. Just think of it this way. Go on this beautiful estate here. Walk out into the paddocks. Are they better off with one plant species or with multiple species? Nature abhors the monoculture. And there was some really good work. I can give you the reference Dr. Tillman did. Plant biomass, species diversity. As we increase species diversity, plant biomass on that particular parcel of land increases. As we increase functional diversity, in other words, grasses, forbs, legumes, trees, shrubs, we also increase production. It runs counterintuitive to what we think. The reason that agriculture went to monocultures is because ease. It was simple, okay? But that's not how nature functions. The biology under the soil is only being fed one root exudate. Whereas with diversity, you're feeding that biology. Everything revolves around biology. We need to feed that biology.
I love that. Thank you. Right, we're going to open it for questions. I've got one from Patrick over here and one here. We'll go here first because the microphone's right next to you, and then I'll go to you, Patrick.
Hello. Hi, my name's Harry Hall. I'm a berry farmer. But my question is around the tomato and how we get back to those high level of nutrient value. As far as I understand it, at the moment, the majority of variety production is in glass or under cover in a substrate out of soil. What would you see the production system being in 10 years' time to get back to those nutrient values?
Yep, great question.
But maintaining the high level of production that we presumably need from the demand?
Very good question. And one thing about Gabe Brown, don't ask me a question if you don't want to hear the answer, okay? Because I'm going to tell it like it is. Truth be told, the only way to increase phytonutrient content in whatever we're producing is through the diversity of biology in the soil. So you're not going to get true nutrient-dense foods being grown hydroponically or in a high tunnel. So how do we make the transition? It really isn't that difficult when you look at, okay, I grow a crop, my neighbor grows a crop, same crop, whatever it is, pick. Okay, production, actually I'll outproduce them, but say they're even a little more than me. But then what do? I grow a cover crop. I graze that with my grass-finished beef, my grass-finished lambs, my pastured pork, my poultry. I'm producing so many more calories of nutrient-dense food compared to them. Who's going to feed the world first, right?
That's brilliant. Thank you. So we've got Patrick here and then woman on the end there. Thank you.
Patrick Holden. Thank you for all you are doing, Gabe. My question is relating to Regenify. Do you agree that we should move towards harmonizing the way we measure the sustainability impacts, not just nationally, but globally, and also link that to food product labeling?
Boy, that's a good question, Patrick. So in generality, yes, but realize the challenges are that testing, the same type of testing, is not available everywhere. And we have to stand true to the fact we can't greenwash things, okay? And you have to take into the context of the environment where you're at. You know, we can grow crops, fruits, vegetables over a wider geographic area artificially, but in order to reach real high nutrient density, they have to be grown in context with the environment. So what I'm saying is, comparing an apple grown in North Dakota to an apple grown in Michigan, you're going to have differences. But that comes back to changing our food system to eating more locally and seasonally. Yep. I'm not disagreeing with the thought of that, but there's a lot to be taken into account there.
Here, there's a question here for the lady in the tank top.
Tank top. Hello, my name's Sally Field. I actually work for a farming community network, but I'm also a dairy farmer. We only milk 60 cows, so in theory we shouldn't actually survive. But we will. We have a farm with massive high organic matter content. I found what you talked about at the end very exciting about the evidence and the benefit of the health benefits. How long before that research will actually land on the farmer's plate that so we could draw down from our milk to say our milk is grown and the benefits from our huge organic matter and will add value to the price of the milk price that we get per litre?
Yep.
Brilliant question.
Yeah,
Thank you.
great question. And Regenified is quantifying that now. Supply chains and products that are moving through the Regenified verification system are having this testing done. Now, it's a whole different animal when you're just getting the test results and getting it put on a label. Now, that doesn't mean you as a farmer can't take advantage and tout that. Doesn't mean Waitrose can't source from those. But to get it on a label, I don't know how it is in the UK, but in the US, that's a real challenge. But we're getting there. We're getting there. Yep.
That's brilliant, thank you. So we've got a question here, and then there's one at the front, and then if I'm honest with you, I'm a bit disappointed over here. Oh, there's two questions here as well. Okay, so we'll go here first.
Chris Mann from Benneman. I've been very interested in regenerative farming, so thank you for that talk. Absolutely.
Thank you.
I'm really interested in the energy requirement for the farm, because obviously that's what we do. I'm presuming it drops off dramatically compared to a sort of conventionally farmed.
Yeah, and it does, and that's one of the things we quantify, and I'll use my own ranch for an example. You know, we have a 6,000 acre ranch, so we have, and as I said, about 2,000 arable acres. We now, okay, we don't use any synthetic fertility, we don't use herbicides, fungicides, pesticides, so you're saving all the fossil fuel usage there. For our crops, well, we go over it to seed, so there's one pass. Then we go over it to harvest. There's two passes. Now, we may seed a couple different crops depending on the season, but fossil fuel usage, energy consumption, a fraction of what it once was. We actually have farms that have eliminated 75% of their fossil fuel usage, their energy usage. Yep.
That's amazing, thank you. Question here at the front, and then somebody over here.
Thank you. Nick Tilton, egg producer. I noticed that a lot of what you do is based around animals being involved on your ranch, and all we hear is about the need to get rid of intense animals because of carbon and all the rest of it. How do we? It's a good thing.
Yep. So I use this as an analogy, and you've all seen pictures. The Great Plains of the United States, North America, large herds of bison moving across them, elk, deer being moved by predators. Serengeti of Africa, same thing. So historians tell us that they think that there was more ruminant animals grazing the North American continent pre-European settlement than there are grazing ruminants on that continent today, both domestic and wildlife. If these GHG emissions were a problem, if they're a problem now, why weren't they a problem back then? You see, it's not the cow, it's the how. We have to move animals, especially in the United States, out of confinement situations, get them out on the land. What I tell people when I talk to them about that is, if you want to increase and speed up desertification and degradation, remove the animals from the land. So we consult on just over 34 million acres. That's quite a bit of acres, a lot of arable acres. A lot of our clients have only cropland. And I tell them this, we can significantly advance your soil health on cropland just through crop rotation, cover crops, etc. But it will never, ever, you will not get that soil to the point it could be if you integrated animals. They just make that much difference into the health of the ecosystem.
But it's the consumer that we have to persuade.
It's the consumer we have to, we don't have to persuade. We have to use knowledge as power. We have to educate. Just like farmers and ranchers here cannot implement these regenerative practices without knowing them, we can't expect consumers to change their buying habits if we don't educate them.
And science is your friend here. Yep. So animals raised one way, huge bloom of greenhouse gases. Animals raised another, it's potentially negative. And that's where we've got to go. That's the story we have to tell. And people are beginning to get it. Well, I've got two questions over here, one at the back and then gentleman here at the front.
Hi, Gabe. It's Doug Christie. I farm in Fife. Where do you think organic farming is regenerative by definition?
Look, I would say this. I have been on really good organic farms that are regenerative. I have been on organic farms that are not regenerative, that are actually degrading. I don't think you can pigeonhole that just with a moniker. You have to look at the individual farm or ranch. Doug, one thing. How many times have you been to my ranch? 3. Are those photos correct?
Yes.
There's a ripple of jealousy, right? You've been 3 times. I've never been once. I'm coming, right? I'm coming. Last question is going to be from here, please. Thank you.
Hi, Harry Morley, beef farmer. I was actually going to ask the same question about the impact of carbon sequestration from grazing animals, but I suppose a sort of linked question is, I think one of the reasons that there's so much pressure on beef farmers, certainly in this country, is because there's sort of standard costing of the amount of carbon that is allocated to a beef animal or a dairy animal for that matter. And as you said, you know, the difference between a feedlot animal and the sort of animal that you're raising and hopefully we're raising as well is just enormous. But are you seeing any changes to that measurement?
And I see my time's up, so I'll make it fast. We've got some really earth-shattering, groundbreaking studies. Peter Bick's going to be over here in the UK with his documentary Roots So Deep. 3 times as much carbon being sequestered if you adaptively graze animals versus set stocked. It's absolutely groundbreaking. Roots So Deep. Watch the documentary.
That's amazing. And you can have extra time. You're amazing. And I can't thank you enough. America gave us wide-scale removing hedges, unpleasant agriculture, and it's now given us the alternative. So thank you so much, Gabe. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to introduce, we've got another Q&A in a second that will be on Slido, that will follow this next session. And I'm going to introduce Jemima Jewell, and then we've got Andrew Hode as well. Jemima, over to you.
Thank you very much, Mark. Hi, everybody. It's a genuine delight to be here talking to you today, although I will admit I had a moment's hesitation because I had the plan for today shared with me, and then I went, right, so you want me to follow the world-renowned leading speaker and expert on regenerative agriculture. Thanks, guys. I don't know who I upset that day, but you know, it might be a tough act to follow, but what an inspiring talk. Thank you, Gabe, so much for sharing your experiences with us. And in addition to sharing thanks with Gabe, I want to say thank you, as others have, to all of you. You've heard and will continue to hear that throughout the day, I'm sure, but we make no secret of the fact that we're incredibly proud of our association with you, with our suppliers and our farmers, and of all of the efforts that you make on our behalf. So, during the next 10 minutes, I'll be looking forward, but I also do want to take some time to look back and remind us all of what we have collectively achieved together over many years and in some cases decades. The key point that I want to emphasize is this. We've come a really long way together so far, and there are many parallels between the journey that we've been on already and the next stage, which we are starting today. I really think those parallels are around ambition, genuine collaboration, and a clear acknowledgement, which again you've heard many times, that we do not have all the answers. So I want to begin by walking you briefly through our agriculture plan. So originally shared in 2020, many of you will have seen this before, possibly many times. But for those of you who haven't, it encapsulates our guiding principles and commitments in agriculture. So there are some commitments here that are around ways of working. So for example, championing the issues that are important to farmers and fishers, or striving to ensure fair payment terms, and making sure that when a sector is in turmoil, we will step up. There are also specific environmental issues called out in this plan. So for example, sourcing animal feed that doesn't contain soy from deforested areas, or avoiding food waste on farm. There is also our ambition to deliver industry-leading worker welfare. And finally, the commitments on the plan around nature, around carbon, and around Leckford are those that you will hear more from Andrew on as we seek to supercharge them through the Farming for Nature programme. Historically, for me, without a doubt, the absolute game-changing work that many of you have led for Waitrose is around our farm animal welfare standards, and that's called out in the plan on the bottom left of the screen. You know, you've heard already today, we are incredibly proud of the impact that we have had together. Farm animal welfare has been a red line for us for more than 25 years. And when it was really pretty unfashionable to be caring about the well-being of animals in the supply chain, and when many took a different view of livestock really as units of production, we took a different approach in partnership with so many of you in the room. We worked out many of the answers to quite big questions as we went along, and we're still going. You know, together we've really held fast in our belief that the animals that produce our food have the right to a good life, followed by a humane death. And we know it can cost a bit more money to raise livestock in this way, but we are unapologetic about our standards. We view them as one of the keystones of our approach, and one on which, as you have heard, there will be no compromise. And time and again, we hear the importance of this to our customers. With Farming for Nature, as Andrew will explain, we are expanding our focus into regenerative farming and the opportunities that presents for resilient food production. As we do so, of course, we're not going to let those other standards that we have worked so hard to achieve slip out of our grasp. And we have much to be proud of. You can see some of the headlines that demonstrate this on the slide. It's been referenced already, but a couple of weeks ago, the results of the latest business benchmark on farm animal welfare were published. And against a very tough assessment backdrop, we were one of the 3 top-performing food companies in the world. We're proud to have pushed barriers and boundaries on worker welfare in the farming supply chain, such as the work we did, again, with some of you in the room, with Pilgrims on human rights impact assessments. And we have championed the importance of method of production labelling on food so that customers can tell more about the systems in which the animals reared for that food were kept. And indeed, we were proud to see the latest government consultation on this actually launched at a Waitrose farm. But our customers haven't moved their focus away from those existing areas. They just expect us to do more on top of what we already do. So to take one example that we've heard a fair bit about today, let me talk about climate change for a moment. So we are very proud to be the first UK retailer to have our net zero climate target validated by the Science Based Targets initiative to include emissions from forestry, land use, and agriculture. We've already worked really hard to minimise the greenhouse gas emissions from our own operations. That's down more than 18% since 2020. But 98% of all the carbon footprint of the products that customers pick up off the shelves in Waitrose, well, that comes from activities that we don't directly control or own, such as in our supply chain. Reducing that is a big task. And as many of you know, we have already made the bold commitment that our UK farms will collectively be net zero by 2035. But as we pursue those climate goals, we have to be really careful in our approach and really considered about the actions that we take. If we just move to looking at, for example, climate in isolation and not that bigger picture, we run the real risk of making quite harmful mistakes. So, for example, highly intensive factory farming can deliver meat with a lower carbon footprint, but have far worse outcomes for local biodiversity, or animal welfare. If it sounds fairly complicated, as you all know, it's because it is. And we're going to need help getting through the change that is required to meet our climate and nature goals. But as we move, all of us, to embrace regenerative farming with its attention to soil restoration, offering so much significant potential to remove carbon from the atmosphere, there is lots of opportunity ahead. So our focus is on helping each other get our heads around the changes that are coming, and I know many of you are a long way ahead of us on that front. We also want to help find ways to help fund the move to net zero regenerative farming, and to do that in a sustainable way. We are really committed to this, and we're exploring what the mechanisms are that will best support you. So from reduced interest rate loans right the way through to developing completely novel shared financial funds, working with other food companies and banks. Of course, the private sector is not the only game in town when it comes to funding. We are delighted today to have Sandy Capilla from the Rural Payments Agency, who will be talking about funding options, and Janet Hughes, Director for DEFRA's Future Farming and Countryside Programme. You'll be able to hear Sandy and Janet, I believe, at one of our farm talks this afternoon, and the RPA also has a stand which will be manned, so please do go and talk to them. I'd also really encourage you to go and talk to the Agri and the Environment and the wider Ethics and Sustainability team. They've got a stand too. Please direct all your most tricky questions to them. Thank you so much. And we'll figure out the answers together. So I will close where I started. We have come a really long way together, and we're going to build on those amazing foundations further. As has been said, we are not going to know what regenerative net zero farming looks like exactly for each of you, but we are committed to working it through together and identifying both the right practical and the right financial support to help it happen. So before I hand over to Andrew Hode, who's the head of Leckford Estate and the sponsor of our Farming for Nature programme, I really just want to reassure you, I hope that we remain acutely aware of the many changes, challenges, pressures that UK farming and beyond is facing into. We will work closely with all of you to keep all of our businesses on track through these continually challenging times. Thank you.
Hello again. I feel like you've probably heard a few of the messages that I'm going to give already, but for me, that's not a problem. I think it's important that we repeat the stuff that really matters to us. At the outset, I want to emphasise a point that James has already made. We are not trying to tell anyone how to farm. Like the rest of the sector, we're heading towards a carbon net zero future. We have to act. There is no alternative. Global weather patterns are changing and becoming increasingly unpredictable, and nature loss is not abating. This is beginning to affect all of us, and we've been thinking hard about what we can do to practically meet these challenges. So what is farming for nature? Well, you've heard a bit about it, but I think it's worth explaining the name to you. In 2022, we launched our John Lewis Partnership Plan for Nature, and Farming for Nature is a progression of this, focusing in on UK farming. Farming, we would not exist without you, our farmers. You're our lifeblood, and we never forget that. You are the reason our shoppers choose us. We know that it's hard right now with awful weather, changing subsidy arrangements, and a host of other problems, and we want to work together to create a better outlook. And nature, without nature, none of us can do anything. It is fundamental to food production. This is not about rewilding. It's not about reducing the amount of land to fit in with some standard or other. I say this not because I don't think the strategies have a place, but they are not the objectives of this programme. This is about working together to make sure we're doing the very best we can to optimise existing on-farm habitats whilst continuing to produce the best British food. As Jemima has already said, we are really fortunate to have farmers who are so willing to work with us to improve standards and adapt to change. We've proved that rising to challenges together makes real and lasting change. The environmental standards you already farm to means that Farming for Nature is launching into a community we know really cares about a kinder way of farming, and in some cases you're already taking action. Before I go into more detail, I want to touch briefly on Leckford and how it fits. As I said earlier, we've owned the estate since 1929. We've been many things in that time, and we continue to operate a diverse set of businesses, but the one constant is farming. Of course, over 95 years of farming business, we've gone through significant change as well. And today, we're a mixed arable and beef farm with fruit and vines, farming over 1,700 acres, and we also contract farm on a neighbouring estate. The produce we sell from here goes into our shops across the UK. We're Leaf Mark certified, and we've been a leaf demonstration farm for 20 years. And we started adopting regenerative principles 4 years ago. 2,800 acres, and includes 3.5 miles of the River Test chalk stream. And we also have 500 acres of triple SI, so we understand the broader challenges of land management. We're the only supermarket-owned farm in the country, which means we think both as farmers and retailers. That gives us a unique viewpoint, but it doesn't mean we have all of the answers, nor do we understand that everything you are going through in your individual businesses. So we want to learn from each other. For example, we know tenant farmers often have a tough time, and we're really interested to see how the government responds to the ROC review impacts in the sector, particularly in the context of this programme and tenant farmers' ability to be rewarded for adopting regenerative farming practices. So our vision for Leckford is that we create a central location to support collaboration around regenerative farming and resilient systems, operating alongside our existing operations. We'll do this in a way that supports individual farm businesses, a space to explore problems and work through them together in a structured way, drawing on expertise from many farming sectors. So here's the Waitrose agricultural plan for the third time. So you've seen this many times today, not only just over the 4 years. But there's 3 things here that this programme really is at the heart of, and those are the ones that are circled. So our existing commitment to make greenhouse gas emissions from our farming supply chain net zero by 2035. Secondly, to support farmers to farm with nature by enhancing biodiversity and playing our part in regenerating natural resources we rely on. And thirdly, leading by example on our own farm, Leckford Estate, innovating, learning and sharing new ways of farming. So Gabe has done a brilliant job of explaining regenerative farming and the impact it can have on the resilience of farms. We know in the UK there is no single definition of regenerative agriculture, but there is general agreement around principles which together build resilience in land-based production systems. These are to improve soils. So over the past few years, our understanding of the vital role of soil biology has increased dramatically, and soil health is at the heart of a regenerative system. Healthy soils with good organic matter and structure hold more water. This will be critical as we experience weather extremes and also mitigating the impact of agriculture on our river systems. Thirdly, soil, if managed carefully, is a powerful tool of taking carbon out of the atmosphere, which is vital in achieving our carbon net zero goals. And finally, enhancing ecosystem biodiversity below and above ground helps nature thrive, benefiting the landscape and the food growing within it. As is hopefully clear, these are key actions to help mitigate the effect of climate change and nature loss, and which we see at the heart of building a more economically resilient future for land-based agriculture and beyond. We know many of you understand this well and already made changes in your business. We welcome this, and we want to now act at scale. So I want to outline our priority outcomes for this programme. And just to explain a little bit, we follow the Sustainable Markets Initiative, of which we're a member. For those of you that haven't come across the SMI, it was created by His Majesty the King when he was Prince of Wales in 2020 at the World Economic Forum annual meeting in Davos. Its aim is to build coordinated global effort to accelerate the achievement of global climate, biodiversity, and sustainable development goals. So there are 4 of these. The first of these is around protecting and enhancing biodiversity. This is as much about improving existing habitats as it is about potentially extending habitat areas. Support payments under countryside stewardship and SFI already incentivise us to do this. What we're missing just now is the ability to quantify what we already know we're achieving, both individually and collectively across our supply chains. Secondly, improving or preserving carbon and water retention in our soil. Our appreciation of the value of soil organic matter has never been so great. It's fundamental to regenerative farming system, whether it's minimising cultivations, introducing livestock, cover crops or herbal lays. These increase the sequestration potential and water retention qualities of soil. Supporting livelihoods of our farmers, underpinned by viable, resilient businesses. It is vital we retain the commercial viability of rural communities and shine a light on the role we all play in caring for the countryside while providing nutritious British food for generations to come. Enhancing the resilience of farming. Nature, precision farming, data all have a role to play in ensuring we use natural resources wisely and use inputs with care. Over time, reducing the need to use synthetic inputs as soil and nature do the work for us. So depending on your farming system, this will feel more relevant to some of you in the room than others. We understand this, and we know that regenerative farming alone does not provide all of the answers. Through this programme, we will engage every sector to determine the extent to which we adopt regenerative principles and ultimately work together to build business resilience, whether that involves regenerative agriculture or alternative means. We know, because you've told us, that this year's weather is going to set many businesses back. With autumn drilling, crops failing under floodwater, and heavy soils being too wet to establish spring crops, even within regenerative systems. However, as Gabe has already demonstrated, the benefits of building better soil and working together to help find solutions can only be positive in helping us meet the longer-term challenges of climate change and nature loss. So we're making 5 key pledges to you today, and James shared a couple of these earlier with you. We will support our UK farmers and growers in adopting regenerative principles to help achieve our existing carbon net zero 2035 goals and tackling nature loss. Secondly, UK farming can play a critical role in restoring nature, and we're announcing a new relationship with Land App, which will capture information on farm habitats, helping prioritise improvements. So over the next 2 years, we will complete a state of nature review across all of our farms. This will give us a baseline and identify how we can improve existing habitats on farm. Some of you will have already done this, many of you won't. Our new partnership with Land App will give you free access to the tools to do this, and we will provide bespoke advisory support to help you. Thirdly, we're announcing partnerships with Leaf and Reading University to support transition. We're making a long-term commitment to support transition through collaboration with these 2 very well-respected organisations, both of whom are here today. We've initially recruited 8 farms to work with us. I think some of them are in the room today. If you are, can you put your hand up? Excellent, thank you, thank you. And we know that farmer-to-farmer learning is so effective in driving and supporting meaningful change. We will establish Leckford as a central hub for supporting this programme, and I'll come on to that a bit more. Finally, and importantly, and this goes beyond the UK, by 2026, we will adopt Leaf Mark standards globally across our supply chains. Our global supply chains are incredibly important, and the adoption of Leaf Mark is an important step to driving sustainability in some of the most stressed parts of the world. This is very much the first stage of our plan, and we recognise that change doesn't come without risk. We will develop mechanisms and commercial solutions to support transition. We've already completed some groundbreaking work in the background to model the actual cost and what it could be, and our work with Troll Farms will be really important in helping make evidence-based decisions around what is required. I've mentioned our ambition for Leckford, and I've described its role within the Waitrose Agriculture Plan, a place for learning, innovation, and sharing. We're going to try things out in the farm and show you what has worked and what didn't. We know every farm context is different, as Gabe has said, but there will be practices that we can try here, then feed out to our 8 farms to test as a precursor to wider rollout. Naturally, we have things we're already looking at, but if there's anything you want us to research or trial at Leckford, we'd welcome the opportunity to speak to you. Just to reassure you again, we are not going to impose anything on you. What we want to do is help find answers and solutions that support our collective drive to regenerative agriculture and carbon net zero. With Leaf and our trial farms, some of whom are here today, who've already identified themselves, we will develop a suite of regenerative agriculture tools and frameworks that will be available to everyone in our supply base. These will not be prescriptive, but they will instead form part of a toolbox that you can access in a way that suits you and the context of your farm. With Reading University, funded by ourselves and Innovate UK, we will find ways of making cutting-edge research into regenerative farming deliverable on farm, making complex, practical, and easy to access. The Reading team are here today, and I know they'll be delighted to speak to you about some of the work they're doing. We're going to build a knowledge transfer hub here, where we will hold courses, run meetings, and encourage peer-to-peer learning. We will build this capability during the rest of this year as a permanent facility for our farmers. Now, we recognise that many of you have travelled long distances today, and we know that Leckford will not be practical for all of you. So my commitment is that we will bring this work to you wherever is most convenient to you, whether a gathering on a farm or even better in a pub. We need you to be able to access the information easily and in a way that works for you. We're not only going to share experiences and ideas for regenerative farming, we also want to use these times we have together to work through practical problems that you're having on farm, whether it's weather, input costs, change in support packages, or whatever else is on the horizon. Costs, change in support packages, or whatever else is on the horizon. Our conversations will help us understand what we need to do to support you and what regenerative can deliver and what it can't. It will also help us collectively find a way through these challenges. So this is the programme in a nutshell. I hope it visually brings to life our approach and the importance of testing, learning, and measuring impact as we seek scale. Our first trial farms are really important, and we're so grateful for their support. They represent beef, dairy, soft fruits, top fruits, glasshouse, poultry, root veg, and pork, which is really broad representation of our supply chain. This is a long-term project, and the results will be evident over years, not months. And through everything I've described today, communication and engagement are critical, and they will be central to this programme. So what next? Well, we know that some of you will be enthusiastic about this project, and some of you, for many and different reasons, maybe less so. But we see this as a critical piece of work for our collective businesses. We know UK farming are facing significant challenges right now, and some of you will be questioning whether your business model can be sustainable given the commercial pressures and the challenges that weather, amongst other things, are throwing at us. We want to help on all fronts. We see the opportunity in strength and collaboration. By understanding your challenges and the opportunities, we can agree where we work together and where we support. We hope the team we've gathered together can bring benefit to you through insight and practical support, helping you make your business more resilient. We are really excited about the potential to create a more positive future. I firmly believe by working in partnership with you and working in partnership with nature, we can create more resilient businesses, a more resilient food supply system, and a better outlook for all of us, and something that is valued by our customers. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. There is no route map for this, right? We don't know what this looks like. And when that happens, you have to make it up. You've got to start somewhere. Do you want to hear another music story about that? It's about David Bowie, and not all my stories are about David Bowie. But when David Bowie was recording a song called Heroes with a producer called Tony Visconti, they were literally soldering the equipment whilst they were recording. You know when he shouts, I'm not going to do it because I got a sore throat from the male trees. When he shouts, there will be heroes, and you can feel a dissonance, like a distance. They set up 3 microphones, one in front of Bowie, one in the middle near you, sir, and one at the back near the tech team, who have been amazing, by the way. And as it got too loud for the front one, the gate turned off and the middle one turned on. And when the volume went up a bit more, the gate turned off and the back one came on. And they didn't know how to do it, so they were making it up. And that's what we're doing. That's what Gabe's doing. That's what Patrick's been doing for years. Well, that's what Waitrose is. Waitrose is Visconti, and you're Bowie. Whether you like it or not, you're Bowie. So we've got a Q&A session now, and I want to invite James, Charlotte, Nathan, Andrew, Jemima, and Gabe back onto the stage, if that's okay. Now, we've got these on Slido, I believe. Wonderful. So, as far as I'm aware, the questions pop up on the screen. Is that right? They're there. They're not on there. They're on there. I'll come over here then. Excellent. So we're going to go with the first question. So this is from Mark. Let me come down here. You don't need to see me. We've got from Mark T. FCN. FCN stands for what? Thank you. Farming Community Network. We take calls from people feeling overwhelmed by farm assurance inspections. Can Waitrose commit to not adding further pressures through audits for their regen aspirations? Look, it's audit fatigue, right? Audit fatigue. So, where are we going to go with this? Who wants to take this on? Do you want to take it?
Sure.
Very brave, Jemima.
Okay. It is a question that is constantly on our mind. You know, I know what amazing work the Farming Community Network does. It's a program we're really proud to support, and you hear directly from farmers, and we know what real pressures audit and assurance gives. I grew up on a farm, and I very, very, very vividly remember the huge and overwhelming stress of paperwork that kind of pervaded any discussions we had when the assurance and inspection agencies of the days were visiting. So believe me when I tell you this is something that is incredibly close to my heart. What we are trying to work through at the moment is the best possible balance that we can take. You know, Gabe talked about, and I can see there's other questions about how do we make sure we're avoiding greenwashing, and that is really important to us. Our ambition might be bold, but we do need to make sure that we can evidence how we are collectively progressing. But in doing so, it is hugely important to us that this doesn't become another burden of paperwork. So by way of, I guess, 2 points of, I hope, reassurance on that front. One, we are exploring every which way that we can work with our existing certification and assurance partners to make sure that this is all folded in together. So, you know, we've talked, Andrew mentioned our partnership with Leaf. We're exploring exactly how far that can take us. One of the other projects that we are spending an inordinate amount of time on at the moment, and many of you as suppliers in the room have input to, is a project to really try and focus down exactly what farm metrics and data we are capturing across the supply chain, because we recognise we ask a lot. We ask about worker welfare, we ask about animal welfare, we're asking more and more questions about nature and about carbon, and I think those are the right questions to ask, but how we ask them and how we make sure that that is solidified and streamlined as much as possible is incredibly important to us. And on that, as with others, we are committed to listening to you. We have had some, I'm going to say, robust feedback from the suppliers that we have talked to already on how we go about doing that, and we really appreciate that. So I don't have the answer of exactly how we are going to assess this on farm at the moment, but I do hope that those principles and that commitment comes through. We want this to be something that helps and supports farming resilience and progress, not something that adds to an audit burden.
That's brilliant. So we can maybe piggyback audits. And if you've got any questions about that, this is how we deal with it, right? We talked to Jemima. Okay, wonderful, thank you. Right, so this is a great question, this next question. I work across different sectors and this is popping up everywhere. Everybody rushed to a net zero or a 50% reduction target, and they all followed the government target of 2030 or 2035. Many organisations, this is from Cowgirl somewhere, like the NFU and other retailers are realising that these targets are not practically achievable. There is no glide path for them. Some were set at a 2040 plus. Target dates are being taken off and their claim replaced by reduction. Do you, collectively, feel that 2035 is still the right target for net zero?
Well, I better take that one before anyone else takes the big questions. I do still think it's the right target for net zero. That might not be what you want to hear, but I can't really pretend that we're standing on the stage here and not setting ambitious targets. And I can't also pretend that we know exactly how we're going to get there. But I know if we don't set those targets, if we keep letting ourselves off, and if we keep saying we'll do slightly better all the time and changing our mind, I know then that we definitely won't make the change we need to make. So it's uncomfortable. We again, with net zero, we know a lot of the practice, we know a lot of the investment, we know a lot of the changes needed, and again, we know it needs measuring, otherwise no one can invest in it properly. But just because we haven't got the right answer, the full answer yet, it doesn't mean we're taking the ambition off the table, because I didn't join this business to be unambitious, and I don't think our customers expect that. And actually, I don't think most of you expect us to do any different either. So, no, we're still aiming at net zero in 2035, along with regenerative.
Does that make you feel nervous, reassured, baffled? And there's a follow-on question here, and this is around measurement, because when I'm doing carbon footprinting, scope 1 to 3, we use the greenhouse gas protocol, and it's incredibly onerous, but it's incredibly important. What systems or framework a Waitrose going to use for standardizing these carbon footprints, for measuring these carbon footprints, and how are you going to share these with your wonderful suppliers?
Start?
Everyone's looking at you, Andrew. No, Jemima.
Well, we might tag team this one. So we are in some ways not short of standardized systems for measuring carbon. It's just there's a lot of them, and there's a lot of different standards. So our overarching guidance comes from our science-based target for climate, which includes forestry, land use, and agriculture emissions. So with that, with the greenhouse gas protocol, there is significant guidance on exactly how we need to set targets, but also how we measure and account for both reductions and removals of carbon. Kind of closer to home, if you like, one of the things that the climate team has been working on for 18 months, 2 years, I'm having a look at them at the back there. They have quite literally been shut in a darkened room for a lot of that time, trying to figure out that between the different kind of carbon footprinting standards and tools that you can use on farm, what works best where. Many of you will already be using them, and you can tell us that. But what works best where? Where are the gaps for any particular tool, for any particular type of farm? And how can we make sure that rather than assuming a kind of one-size-fits-all framework, that we kind of leave the space for you to be able to use what works best for the system you're farming in, that we can then aggregate that. Because one of the really big things as we work towards our carbon targets, I think, is that we know that a lot of information that is fed in at the moment is based on industry standards. And a great deal of the time, I don't believe the people who are farming in this room are farming to industry standards. You are farming far higher than that. And so a really big thing that the climate team is looking to do is to pull in that actual data. So there is guidance. I won't lie, some of it's quite dense, but there is guidance. It's coming your way, and that's what we'll be working to kind of make sure that we can offer both that flexibility, but then also that consistency. Anything on it?
No, only to reinforce the point around consistency. There are a lot of measures out there, and we want to try and demystify that. But I think we are waiting for some clarity, really around actually what are the tools that are really fit for purpose. And so once we've got that, we will then be able to really, sort of be very clear about the route in which we want to do it. We have the same challenges here. There are I can give you probably 3 different reads on what carbon looks like on the estate. And we've got to get beyond that. Otherwise, it becomes very difficult to be able to demonstrate progress.
It's brilliant. And we haven't even gone into biodiversity net gain and measurement of that. These are super complex scientific measurements. Maybe I get a reflection from you, Gabe, on that. But there's a question from Joe King, or is that a real name? Joe King, I love it. In Northern Ireland, we have a huge problem with nutrient runoff, causing a problem in local rivers and waterways, and then ultimately dead spots and eutrophication in the sea. And it creates blue-green algae. We don't have access to crop rotation as we're mostly grassland. Any tips here on how we get our soils healthy, Gabe?
Yep. So remember, the key to that, it's water. It's water soluble. So in other words, it's nutrients in the inorganic state. Excuse me. We have to convert that to the organic state. In other words, we need to put it into a living plant. Now the question is, if it's grazing land and it's in perennials, there should be no nutrients applied. Excuse me, that system should be naturally cycling enough nutrients where it will only release the amount of organic nutrients into inorganic for plants to use depending on the biology in it. So perennial systems, you should not be applying synthetic fertility to that. And at the same token, you cannot be applying copious amounts of compost, etc., because you can end up with the same problem. That's pretty easily solved in a perennial system.
While Gabe's having that drink, there was a question, I can't, oh, it's there, it's number 2. This is a great one. Thank you, Siobhan. How does Waitrose plan to create consumer pull for regenerative farming produce? I want to go to you with that, and I don't know why. It's just because the money really interests me. But any of you.
Well, fine, and then I'll hand the mic over to our customer director who can maybe build on that. But I guess it goes back to kind of what I shared earlier in terms of we've got to get the food chain working. You know, there's you, super important in terms of where our food comes from. We've talked a lot about how we can work together to improve that, but we've got to get the demand coming in for better food. So love the question. You know, what are we doing, I guess, in terms of the products that we've got on shelf? So I guess, you know, as of a few days ago, last weekend, we've got wild farmed 5 loaves of bread of wild farms, lots of disruptive communication and unpack, and lots of the communication that Nathan's team do. A Leckford loaf as well. And, you know, I don't think enough customers know that we've got so many amazing products that have come from Leckford for so many years. You know, the rapeseed, the brute, you know, the cider, the apple juice, the flour. So we will be rebranding that and much bolder communication in terms of how it has been farmed and why it is better. So just a few examples, you know, lots of you in the room as well in terms of, you know, branded products. It's not just own brand, you know, we've got some brands that are also doing some great work in this space. So how we amass that together and talk about it really strongly on shelf, but also I think really critically through all of our channels. And we are blessed with some amazing channels, whether it's our magazine, our weekend newspaper. Lots of you are very vocal on our Waitrose Farmers. These are all ways where we need to kind of raise the customer consciousness, because customers aren't aware of, you know, this loaf of bread is different and better than this loaf of bread. So how we create that distinction so that customers can make more of a conscious choice is something that we will be overtly doing a lot more of, whether it's through the products we have on our shelves, but I think more importantly how we shout about them.
That's pretty good.
Thanks. That's the numbers.
You didn't hear that? I just said exactly. Look, I mean, this is why it's so important that we work together. I mean, my team and Charlotte's team in particular work really, really closely together. I've been in the business about a year, and I'd say if we've made 1% of the progress we want to make, we're being generous, right? We know there's a lot more we need to do in this space. I'd offer a couple of bits of context. One is customers are incredibly busy. They have busy lives. They've got lots of other things going on in their lives, which I think is just important to notice. They're time poor. They're sometimes cash poor, right? So would you believe 75% of our customers get to the end of every month with no money left in their bank account, with no savings going? So they've got other things on their mind, whether it be saving up for a holiday or just kind of frankly, you know, holding on to a job in a cost of living crisis. So we've got to be I'd say, realistic about what we can achieve over what time periods. But we've also got to be relentless and think creatively about ways to cut through. And Charlotte's given a couple of examples just in the last week of how we've begun to bring to life things like the Leckford loaf or the Wild Farm. I encourage you to go down the bakery and have a little look. I do think in-store communication is really, really important. I mean, again, we've got to be a bit realistic. You know, our shops are shops; they're not libraries, and we've got to be realistic about how much information customers can take in. Right? So customers have seen between 50 and 100 advertising messages a day, and they probably remember 5% of them if they notice 5%. So it's a very small. So cutting through is difficult. So I think the key to it is going to be thinking about the whole customer journey end to end, but also being imaginative and creative about how we can kind of cut through and pierce the consciousness. And I think we've made a bit of a start with some of the activities you're going to see in the next couple of weeks, but there's a lot more to do.
Wonderful, thank you. So another question for Gabe. You published your book in 2018. What would you have included if you were writing it again today?
No, well, thanks for that question. And yes, there is being one wrote. I'm taking a bit longer this time. But without a doubt, what we added the sixth principle of context. Context is just so critically important because each and every farm and ranch is a little bit different. And you have to take that into account when you're implementing the other 5 principles to drive the 4 ecosystem processes. So it'd be that of context.
That's amazing. And then just really, how long have I got? 57 seconds. Okay, great to be ahead on animal welfare, said James Black. But does the latest proposal by government on labelling pork run the risk of undermining our supply chain excellence by making everybody mediocre? Rush to the bottom. What do you think?
I think that exploring method of production labelling on meat is a fantastic thing. We know that so many of our customers have a different perception of what farming looks like to what the reality is. When we talked about our dairy being free range, and we're the only people to talk about our liquid milk being free range, everyone went, well, isn't everybody's? And the answer is no. And we've seen with eggs what having very clearly defined names, caged, barn, free range, organic, consistently, and being mandatory across all retailers, we've seen what that does for sales from higher welfare systems. So I think as Waitrose farmers, there's actually a huge opportunity there to really call out what our minimum standards are. Does labelling say everything there is to say about animal welfare? Absolutely not, and we'll always want to talk to our customers more about it. But would it create a level playing field and really show where farmers like those in this room are going above and beyond? Absolutely yes.
Wonderful, thank you. And they will be around all day, so please feel free to collar them and cajole them later, but a round of applause. Thank you. You're wrapping up. So I'm going to hand on, before I wrap up in terms of what's happening this afternoon, I'm going to hand back to James, who's going to give us some reflections on this morning.
Thanks, Mark. So you've heard a lot of information this morning. You heard from Charlotte and Nathan about how ambitious we are about the business we work for and how important purpose, a sense of purpose, is to everyone who works in Waitrose. And as I've said a few times, when we talk everyone who works for Waitrose, we include you guys. We see this as one big partnership. We think we're heading in a very ambitious direction as a business. And as Nathan pointed out, this commitment to farm with nature and to restore the UK's beautiful countryside and biodiversity and soil health, alongside improving the quality of the food we sell and proving that to customers and improving the value they place on the food that you create, we think that ambition is more important than anything else we can do in the business right now. And we also know that that ambition has no end date. We've set a target here of 2035, and 11 or 10 years feels like a long time. I'm pretty sure it'll pass in a flash. And so we collectively have to start from the place of trust and of working together and of joint ambition to achieve what we think is one of the most important things this business will ever undertake to do on behalf of our partners, on behalf of our customers, and like we've said several times, on behalf of all of you. As I've said several times, we don't have the answers, and we're being really clear about that, and we are not here to tell you how to farm. As Gabe said beautifully, it's all about context. So our commitment today is to position this flag in 2035 and make a really clear statement about what we believe is one of the most important things in the food system today, and to invite you all, to encourage you all to come and follow us on this journey. And our commitment is that we will be with you every single step of the way. So, that is the download part of the day, for the morning anyway, complete. Mark's got some extra notes on what's coming next. We've got some amazing resources for you to take on this afternoon, and you can pick and choose. But before that, we have a delicious lunch, which is, it wouldn't be a Waitrose Farming Conference without one of those. So please enjoy that. But in the meantime, I will hand you back to Mark. Thank you.
So on your cards, on your lanyard, you've got 11 possible farm talks to go to. I'm not going to read them out. You can all read. You can only choose 4. It's hard. It's like trying to choose your favourite kid, right? It's really hard. I got 4 kids. It's really tough. No, it's not. It's actually dead easy for me. But just think about the logistics. There's a map on the other side that'll tell you where everything is. Maybe cluster. Maybe go from one to another close one. But don't miss out Benneman. Benneman are going to be the other side of the biogas plant. This is a really important project. So it's really worthwhile you stepping a little bit further away and spending a little bit more time getting there. And look, I've talked about David Bowie a lot, but I genuinely believe that we can be heroes. I genuinely believe that we can. We're standing on the solution. And for all this time, we've thought it was the problem, or we've let people tell us that we're the problem. We're not. We're the answer. And you know that. And it's about coming together and traveling faster and traveling further. And I've thoroughly, I hold in my hand the greatest fear I've had for climate and the greatest solution. The greatest fear I have for biodiversity and the greatest solution. And in reality, that's what you've got in your hand. You hold it, not me. All I do is cheer you on and buy nice things from great people, and that's why I buy from you. So, have an incredible lunch. I won't see you again. I'm not on the stage again, so I'm going to just do a little thank you, which I'm not scripted, but the tech team make us look good. All right? We're average. They make us look good, so thank you. And thank you to Sharon for sterling leadership, and also to John Gregson, because sometimes you hide at the back, but that's because you're lifting everybody else up, and I see that really strongly in this organisation, and everyone that's been on stage. You've all been amazing. Enjoy your lunch. Crack on.